All right, everybody. Welcome to This Week in Startups. We are going live. Let's say hi to some noties. You never know who might have turned the notification button on, Lon.
You never know.
You never know.
I'm now, today is the first day I'm now cross-posting this to my social channel. So we'll see if any.
Oh, we're going to get the Lon fans
We'll see if any
involved?
old school Lon fans find their way over here.
Oh, man. What if we get Tyler on a show? Then it would be like a time capsule 15 years ago. I have to add 10 pounds. I have to add 20 pounds.
Yeah, we'll all have to start using all the words we stopped using over the last 15 years.
You mean and the word you mean is Ray?
I'm not saying it.
Ray, the movie Ray.
The movie Ray, right. Well, I'll start.
And today I was tardy.
I
was tardy today.
Yeah.
And we both love the movie Ray. Leave it at that.
Who doesn't love the movie Ray? Jamie Foxx is a treasure. Was
I tardy?
Only a few minutes. Not exceptionally. But so I'm not gonna say the word. You're not gonna trick me that easy.
Was I?
I spent a long time trying to train myself not to use that word. I'm never.
Me
going
too.
Back.
Me too.
Never going back. It took me too long to get here.
I understand exactly what you're saying. It took a long time to take it out of our vocabularies.
Exactly.
Also, calling people a Ray. Other word.
Yeah. Any of the words. I shouldn't have brought this up. This is on me. It's
100% on you. This is the banter. This is what you get if you put on your notifications. If you have notifications on, you will get us going near the third rail, putting our hands over it, and not touching it.
Not ever touching it.
When I was a kid, we used to, God, I don't want to be a bad influencer, but we used to jump on the tracks and go from one train station to the other.
Oh my God.
In the New York City subway station.
That's very dangerous.
It is stupid. Not as stupid as people doing the Spider-Man thing, which is all the rage out in Coney Island where the train's on the L. These kids are climbing up on the top of the train and riding the top of the train with absolutely no understanding that at some point there'll be a bar coming to decapitate you or smash you.
But that is in every movie where a person gets on top of the train. They do have to eventually hit the deck because the thing goes right over. It's like a classic trope.
You would think. You would think people would figure this out. Hey, Aiden, Noti Gang representing Josh says, give me more founder mode. Yes. Founder mode. We're going to talk about Jeff Bezos going into founder mode today.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Woo! Who was the first Noti to say hi? Irina. She's a classic Noti. Matthew, a classic Noti. Pantheon is I think a new Noti.
Going back today, it looks like D_Davis was the first Noti to say hi today.
And then please reply is part of the Noti Gang on X. You know what? They're both X Noties. Can someone buy me supper? King Hall UTD.
Supper.
You literally want dinner? What country are you in, and what are we talking about? We're talking about are you in Thailand for $3, or are you in Manhattan for $30? What are we talking about here in terms of cost?
Supper is not a full dinner. Like I feel like a supper implies a smaller meal than a full dinner.
Supper's what you have in Spain, because you have tapas on the way home. They're basically federal employees in Spain. Let's call it what it is. These guys do a siesta, then they get some tapas, then they go home, they spend some time with their family.
Yeah.
And then they go out to supper at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. They show up at 10:30.
8 o'clock is early in Spain for them to be.
Very early. 9 o'clock. This is why we're moving. I know I told everybody we're moving back to in person in Austin at the firm. Everybody's hand ringing. I changed my mind. We're going to Barcelona. Can you imagine if I tell everybody we're coming back to the office and I change it to Tokyo?
I bought a beautiful place in Toledo. You're all going to love it.
Like Jay Cal is a completely clueless 1%er.
Yeah.
And he just thinks everybody can move at will.
You would not. I don't think you would be into that siesta Spanish way of life. The pace is a lot slower. I don't know.
That's true.
I think you might struggle.
I think with AI, everybody's getting so good at their jobs. It's incredible. I'm tempted to start this Doge podcast I've been threatening to do.
Oh, God.
Where I just Doge things. It's like I'm a Doger. I just Doge.
Wait, so you mean you would go in and say, here, you can lose 70% of your overhead?
Oh, that's an interesting idea. I go in as the Doginator
That's what I thought you meant.
That would be a
Doge
great
thing.
reality show, the Doginator. You know what? We should, when we have the studio up and running in Austin, we should make a funny skit of the Doginator coming in, like the Terminator, and just doing these things.
I thought that's what you meant, that you were going to like help people Doge their lives or whatever.
Actually, you could Doge your life too. Yes, you could be just looking at. I could just take out your bills and be like, Netflix, no, and Disney.
Like that Caleb Hammer show. I like Financial Audit. You ever seen him?
No.
He's a YouTube guy, Caleb Hammer. He's out of Austin. And he does a show on YouTube I love called Financial Audit. It's basically like a tough love show, but for your budget. So people who they're drowning in debt, their financial life is a mess. They come in the first half of the show is he just rips them a new one. Like, what's wrong with you? You can't afford this. You're buying crap. You got a Royal Caribbean card that's maxed out, you idiot. But then the second half is he helps them get their life together.
So you're saying he works with Financial Rays on what needs to be done.
People who are tardy.
If you were tardy to the party. Yeah. All right. Chris says, don't know what's on the docket. You could go to thisweekinstartups.com/docket. We've got a great show for you today. We're going to do 15 minutes of news or so, one news story and maybe two.
We got to get through that because we got some blockbusters.
We could always do one at the end too if we want to. We could do a little magic of editing.
You're the host.
But then we got, thanks. Finally, somebody said it. It's up to you. And then, very exciting, Rahul from Superhuman will be with us. Then Vlad from Robinhood. Now, if you hear the Vlad interview, that's probably going to come on Friday in the podcast feed. This one will come on Wednesdays. You know, we got a couple thousand people who like to tune into the live show and see us make the show. So you get to do that. And here we go. 3, 2. All right, everybody, welcome back to This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis. I'm talking at 2x speed. So if you have your podcast player on 2x already, it's 4x. With me, of course, is Lon Harris, our editorial director here at This Week in Startups and other projects. And we've got a full docket. All the links you need are in the show notes, but let's get to work. What are my choices? Really quick, Lon. And which one do you think I'll pick first for a news story we can do before we have my good friend Rahul from Superhuman coming on in the second half of the show as our guest?
3 big news stories today I think we should pick from. There's Anthropic raised $3.5 billion. That's a big raise from them. There's Microsoft testing out free Office apps with ads. And then Jeff Bezos making big moves as the publisher of the Washington Post.
Right, these are big, and they're all big news. You know, I'm a media guy, so I like the media stuff. I think, I'll start with the Bezos one.
Sure.
Maybe cue it up for people and just maybe a couple of quotes from his letter.
Sure.
On because for background, he bought the Washington Post years ago. The Washington Post guys used to hang out, and gals and the owners used to hang out at the TED conference. He was at the TED conference. I was at a bunch of parties, and I guess they wanted to sell it. The family wanted to sell it. He bought it. It's kind of like a side hustle for him, but it's been losing hundreds of millions of dollars since he bought it. Like I think he's lost $500 million on this purchase. And
he's made a few sort of controversial moves. There was, of course, the endorsement situation before the election, where normally big papers like the Washington Post endorse a candidate for president. They sort of decided to stop doing that this year at Jeff Bezos's sort of suggestion or prompting. Patrick Soon-Shiong at LA Times made a similar sort of decision. It was very controversial before the presidential election. So he sort of stepping into the breach once again. He sent a email to Washington Post staffers just this morning about a change coming to the paper's just the opinion section. Quote, I'm writing to let you know about a change coming to our opinion pages. We are going to be writing every day in support and defense of 2 pillars, personal liberties and free markets. He continues, we'll cover other topics too, but viewpoints opposing those pillars will be left to be published by others. There was a time when a newspaper, especially one that was a local monopoly, might have seen it as a service to bring to the reader's doorstep every morning a broad-based opinion section that sought to cover all views. Today, the internet does that job. So it's an interesting formulation. He's saying if you want to get a broad spectrum of all opinion, you can already do that. That's the internet. He wants to sort of narrow the focus to this track. I personally, and I'm curious to your thoughts, it feels very broad to me. Personal liberties could be taken to mean basically you pick what you think personal liberties mean to you. So I mean, free markets, I think,
yeah.
is more obvious the kinds of thought that he's looking for.
You know, one of the terrible limitations of podcasts is that I can't put an eggplant emoji into this thread while you're talking,
right?
Which is what we do in the is something I came up with in the group chat, in my other group chat, not a business one. Whenever somebody says something about capitalism or free markets,
yeah.
Instead of giving it a thumbs up, I give it an eggplant emoji. Why?
We all know what that means.
It just means I love eggplant. And I think it's
we
delicious.
all know the eggplant and the peach are the most sexual of all
yes,
emojis.
It means I am excited. And so this is exciting. There's a lot of different ways to go at this. But maybe just a little bit of context and history is important here. Washington Post, LA Times, these have fantastic, talented people who work for them. However, they are obviously super left-leaning. These are coastal cities. Over time, that's where they've gone. And if you look at the chart of, and I should have pulled this chart up, but there's a great chart over people in newsrooms who identify as conservative. And it used to be when I got into the business in the 90s as a journalist and starting my own publications, it was something like 35%. It's now down to like single digits. So these are most publications in the newspaper business have gone this way. So that's one trend. The second trend, of course, is, they're competing with a million people having a voice. In the old days, you picked your local publication, you picked it up on the way to work, you went to work in an office, you didn't have a smartphone with you. So what you did on the bus or when you got to the office or before you went to the office is you got a newspaper delivered to your doorstep and you read the news. That's how you caught up. That's obviously gone for now, 25 years. People have not done that habit in a major way. It's basically over. I canceled all my print subscriptions about 5 years ago because although I like them, even the Sunday New York Times, I was like, this doesn't make sense anymore to kill trees. And I've read all the stories already because they would publish them on Friday and Saturdays.
Sure.
So you have that as another layer to this. And then you have a third layer, which is the game on the field. The game on the field, since Rupert Murdoch came to America and picked a side with Fox News, just hard picked a side, was he lost half the audience, but the other half, which was underserviced at the time, conservatives, loved Fox News, kept it on 24/7. And he made a ton of money. It was incredibly profitable, obviously. And
I think that's the key point that I think a lot of this conversation is missing. Everybody is discussing this news ideologically. And of course, there are troubling things about a billionaire publisher coming in and telling journalists, here's what you're allowed to say, here's what you're not. That always has negative sort of connotations and implications, and for good reason. But the history of this is, this is not like an unprecedented thing. The idea that a newspaper would have a voice or come from a certain side or represent a particular point of view, especially in a big picture way, like in free markets or representing, individual liberty or whatever, like that's where journalism was for most of its history. And it was always business driven. People were deciding what should our paper's voice be based on what's going to sell, editions and subscriptions, not what ideologically do I think we need more of in the discourse.
Yeah, and when I was a kid, you would get on the subway, and when I had my first job, and I started going into the city in 1988, I was 17 years old or so, I would get the newspapers, and it was 25 cents for the Daily News, 25 cents for the Post, 50 cents for the New York Times, whatever. You'd buy it, and for $1, you'd be informed. At the time, I was making $4 an hour. You get the idea. So it was like a fine use of proceeds. And they were each trying to capture audience. Now the way they do that is link bait, picking a side, getting subscribers. And this is what podcasts, Substack, and niche publications have done. The idea of having a middle of the road publication in 2025 is crazy because a middle of the road publication that calls balls and strikes will be hated by both sides and it will get no viewers. How do I know this? You've heard me on this podcast or All In talk about, hey, I'm a moderate and here's the balls and strikes. I'm hated equally by the left for my position on, say, trans kids and, gender affirming care. I think that should wait till you're 18.
Position on that. That's true.
Yeah, and they hate me. Like I don't pass the purity test on that one. And then on the other side, I'm like, well, Trump did kind of break the rules, and he probably committed some crimes on the margin here. And there could be lawfare because some people do have an axe to grind with him, and like the truth is actually textured, etc. That position does not work in a world where you have Fox News and MSNBC,
right?
Battling it out, etc.
And there was a time when, when Horace Greeley and the New York Tribune decided we're going to be the unbiased, just give you the facts news page. That was a marketing strategy too. It was like all the other publications are fighting it out. They're all ideological. We're going to be the one newspaper that isn't. So it was also an edge. It wasn't like this is the only moral way to publish a newspaper. It was here's a competitive edge and a way for me to corner a new market.
Yeah. So now on to what his politics are and that he's engaged. I think it's super important that if you own one of these assets that you bought for vanity reasons or intellectual reasons or because you could, that, in today's market, you kind of got to make a decision here because it's going to be chaos. You got to pick which way you want to go with it. And he wants to go with, some classic American ideals of individual freedom and free markets. This is,
it really depends on what individual freedom means to you. I think
freedom of speech, First Amendment, Second Amendment, right to bear arms, those kind of issues.
Trans rights are also individual freedom, but I don't think that's what Jeff Bezos is saying.
You know what? I think he might run an article that, trans people are allowed to do whatever they want as an adult and maybe with kids, and that's actually a perfect example of an issue where, you could have a really important discussion. And I saw the guy from Pod Save America, which I don't listen to, but, he was lecturing. Yeah, it was a little too much.
Jon Favreau, that guy?
Yeah, I think that Jon Favreau guy, not the guy from Star Wars.
There's two different Jon Favreaus. There's the Pod Save America guy, and then there's the Star Wars swinger.
This Pod Save America guy was like literally ripping into and lecturing Bill Maher, who was a liberal's liberal, and he was just
yeah,
whatever. He's been a liberal his whole life. He's for pot being legal and gay rights and everything. He's just like, I think we lost the election because of this issue. Maybe we should reconsider. And Jon Favreau went off on him. Wouldn't even let him finish the sentence. It was crazy. Anyway, I like the two issues he's taking on. And now that he stands for something, it makes it very clear for anybody who works there to decide if they want to work there or not. Just like
that already happened. David Shipley, the person who was until this morning the chief of the editorial section of the Washington Post, he has left. Bezos says he offered Shipley the chance to stay, but he wanted somebody who was going to be not just, I'll put up with this, but excited about this new chapter. And Shipley was not that guy. So Shipley has exited the Washington Post.
All right. So there you have it, folks. It's a very simple equation here. If you don't have anybody, this is the lesson for founders. If nobody's the captain, the ship can go around in circles. People can go up to the deck and, change the coordinates and go to a different direction. You need to have a captain, whether it's a publication, a newspaper, or a company. Somebody's got to make the final decision. Somebody's got to set a mission. And I think maybe he had set it and forget it. And I think the same thing happened to the guy, Dr.
Soon Shang, I believe.
Soon Shang, I think is how you pronounce it. At LA Times. A lot of times people buy these things and they think, it'll just be like a great pizzeria. It's been around forever. And you know what? You need to have a mission. You need to have a strategy. You need to have tactics. And if you don't have a clear leader and a clear mission, well, then you might have some people on the ship rowing one way, another group rowing the other way. Narrow the focus. I like it. It's the Washington Post, so it's about politics and about Washington, D.C. It should be an issues-based paper. I love the idea that it's based on the Constitution is kind of what I took from it. Maybe I'm wrong, but make it about the Constitution. What do they call the people who are interpret everything literally from the Constitution? Like
strict,
God, there's a term for like the people who are in the who are
I'm blank. Strict constructionists.
They just basically read the Constitution literally. They don't want to change it all.
No, I'm right. It's strict constructionists. I looked it up.
Yeah. So I think he's kind of saying that, like American ideals, and maybe the people who, are more socialist in America, as is their right, as a free country. Maybe that's going to be what tears us apart as a country, but maybe this publication will make its finest stand for capitalism, free markets. Maybe, what's the one? Jacobian is the commie one, or the socialist one? Jacobian?
A Jacobite would be a socialist.
Okay, yeah. So
you mean the publication? Oh, right, yeah. There is a publication called Jacobian or something.
It comes in on my feed once in a while. Somebody from that publication is like, no, we should kill everybody and divide up their money, and there's no need to, ban billionaires, kind of thing.
Well, right, but I mean, but you're correct. Like there are always been ideological newspapers, and I mean, this is like going back to the Hurston Pulitzer day. Well, I don't know if it's a non-story, but I think people lack the historical context. It feels like this is a move away from everything newspapers have always been about. Mm-hmm. It's like not really. Like the idea, like there were a long time when newspapers were just the political machines that controlled the city, or the county also controlled the newspapers, and so
All right, listen, great discussion. We'll do another news story after the interviews. We'll drop Lon off. Well done, Lon. And I will invite our guest to come up. And once we have Rahul checked, we will get started. So you can turn Rahul on, and we'll just do a quick tech check here. And there's my guy, Rahul. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Welcome back to This Week in Startups. It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been, I think, about 6 months. I think this is the first time I'm doing it live, though.
Yeah, it is. I'm enjoying the live format. You get, I'd say the top 1% to 2% of the audience likes to come in live, because this stuff we're doing right now will be edited out. It'll be nice and tight for podcast presentation, but they get to see us sipping coffee and shooting the shit, chewing the fat, whatever it is, as it were. So let me do a proper introduction here and get my notes up. And you're, of course, recording your QuickTime, so we have a high-res, beautiful version of yours. Here we go. There you are. 4, 3, 2. All right, everybody, welcome back to This Week in Startups. I'm super excited to have my friend, entrepreneur Rahul Vohra, on the program. I met him because I emailed over a decade ago. info@rapportive.com was a little tool I was using in my Gmail that told me in my Gmail, hey, this person emailing you, this is their LinkedIn, this is their Twitter, this new service that had come out, and I could very quickly follow them on the other services. And it grew into even more enrichment of the lead, or email enrichment of the person. It was a brilliant product that got sold too soon. He had a couple of co-founders. They sold it to LinkedIn. We made a wonderful, I don't know if it was a 4 or 5x in a very short period of time. And I was just a nascent angel investor writing 25 or 50K checks. And Rahul then did a tour of duty over at LinkedIn. And I said to him, hey, please, if you, when you come up with your next idea, promise me I'll be the first investor. He said, yeah, no, I would always contact you if I'm doing another project. I said, no, I want a literal promise from you. He looked at me like I was crazy, which, if you listen to this program more than 10 times, is more accurate than not. And he agreed. One Sunday afternoon, he said, hey, Jake, are you around? I said, can't wait to hear the new idea. I'm getting bagels. Meet me here in Cow Hollow. And he told me the story of wanting to take on Gmail with a product that was faster, better, and that he would charge $1 a day for or so. And that it would be a new category, a category referred to as luxury or power user software. And you always know a great entrepreneur when future entrepreneurs pitch themselves with the same playbook. So I've got no less than 500 people who've applied to our accelerators and our fund, which you can do at launch.co/apply and get a meeting with our team. No less than 500 people have said we're superhuman for X, which is now short in the city of San Francisco and the wider entrepreneurial community around the world, as I'm going to make something that is designed elegantly and for power users. With that, welcome my friend, Rahul.
Amazing. What an intro. Thank you for having me back.
That intro is off the top of my head because I just know the story so well. And, when you have a great hit and you have, a great relationship with the founder as an investor, you cherish it because it's fun. And it's been so fun to watch your career and get to, play a minor role in it and be on the sidelines. And once in a while, you got to make a hard decision and we talk, which is, just makes me feel great to be on the other side of those phone calls. I wanted to have you on today to get the update on Superhuman. So many topics to talk about. And you did actually a nice private discussion with our syndicate, thesyndicate.com, and our angels last week. Thank you for doing that. That was a private conversation. But let's start with, how AI is impacting your business. Everybody knows Superhuman. It's elegant. It's fantastic. You have a large number of users. You've raised a large amount of capital, and you're extremely, extremely focused. But you've made a bunch of AI announcements since you were last on, and we've been talking about, hey, how is email going to get impacted? I've had no less than 50 different AI companies tell me that they're planning on building what you've already built. So let's go through what Superhuman has done in AI, how it's worked, and then we'll get into what you've been releasing recently, or the future plans.
Absolutely. Okay, wow. That's quite the tee up. So let's split that then into two pieces. There's what we've done and what's coming. I think what we've done is, even by itself, pretty special. So for those that don't know, Superhuman is the most productive email app ever made. Our customers are getting through their email about twice as fast as before. They reply 1 to 2 days sooner. They save 4 hours per person every single week. Those customers are the latest startups coming out of amazing accelerators and incubators like Jason's, like Y Combinator, all the way through up to some of the biggest companies in the world. We recently sold one of the big three management strategy consulting firms. I can't say which one, but we have thousands of people there using Superhuman, which is incredible. And actually, even just a year ago, that would have been unthinkable. So very exciting to see all of that happening. What we've been doing over the last year or two is heavily investing in AI. We were one of the first to the game and started with what you might consider now to be surface level features, things like Write with AI. So you can just turn a few ideas or a phrase into a fully written email. The thing that differentiates Write with AI in Superhuman versus what you might be familiar with in, let's say, Copilot or in Gemini is it genuinely writes like you. We all talk differently to different people. With some people we're more structured and formal, with others we're more casual and relaxed. And Superhuman knows the difference. It knows how you write to specific people. And we'll actually take a look at an example of that shortly. So that's Write with AI. We also have auto summarize. You've probably seen this, Jason, at the top of your emails. Yeah, these one-line summaries, so you can get through your email really fast. And instant reply. So imagine waking up to an inbox where every single email already had a draft reply. You would just hit edit and then send. And then the last thing that we released in the past, but this is actually, of the 4 things I've mentioned, this is people's most favorite thing, is Ask AI. This is what I demonstrated on the podcast last summer. You can basically come in and ask a question. Sam Altman talks a lot about how AI is taking increasingly large chunks of work and making it instantaneous, or at least asynchronous. And the example that I showed last time was a very real example, which is every time we launch a feature, I read through the thousands of emails that we get back and I pick the best ones and I put them on a slide and I present them to the company in an all hands. It usually takes me 20 minutes, half an hour. It's kind of a lot of work. And with Ask AI, I can do that instantly. So that's all by way of what we've already done. But last week, we launched our biggest evolution yet.
Okay, so these features are awesome. I love the summaries because sometimes people feel when they're raising money, they need to send me not only their pitch, but their life story, including the last 3 startup ideas they had and what it was like growing up in their small town. When I'm a venture capitalist, I'm like, what's the idea? Do I have a conflict in the portfolio? And let's get right to it. So some of them are obvious, but it's always about the execution, I find. And that's one thing that you have had a profound impact, I think, on my thinking and the industry's thinking, which is, how should this be executed? A lot of the ideas, listen, it's obvious that you should make a summary of emails, but how do you execute it? And having a point of view about that and understanding who is your customer. And I think before we go to what the new stuff, I want to just pause for a second and talk about your philosophy on features and executing them well. Versus executing them quickly. There's been this big debate in our industry, ship fast, break things, if you're not embarrassed by it, you obviously don't take that. You want to have refined features. So give me your thoughts on and how it might have changed over time when you feel something's ready to be launched, and how much time you put into it. How much time do you spend, in the laboratory, maybe in a small beta test with a couple of users? What's the playbook for you now?
Well, it's funny that you say playbook because, and you mentioned execution. One of the things folks like to know about this podcast is I'm very excited to share my screen. Let's do something I've never done before. I'm going to share a slide from the Series C deck, which I think is very relevant here.
Let's take a looky, Poom.
And if anyone knows how to turn off this, this has been driving me
the
nuts
people in the
recently.
comments on the side?
Anyway. No. The people in the comments are great. Whatever the new Google Chrome is accessing your screen.
Oh, yes.
Anyway, what's the playbook? So it's funny you mentioned execution, and Jason, you haven't even seen this deck, but you somehow hit the nail on the head here, which is we have this thing that we call our joy formula. And I need to be careful what slides I share, because this is genuinely our Series C deck. But basically, we have this saying internally, which is that what we make people feel is just as important as what we make. And people have asked us for a long time, like, what are you actually making? And what it really is joy in software form. And lots of the smartest folks in Silicon Valley, Patrick, of course, from Stripe, one of the best in the business, said, well, Google has hundreds, thousands of people working on Gmail, and yet you were quickly, in some sense, easily able to build something better. Why? You just sat down and calmly built something better. It feels like that shouldn't work. So what's going on? And so I wrote him back and I said, we actually have a formula for joy. We figured out how to build joy and then massively distribute it and scale it to people. And it starts with product design and engineering, but it's also in everything else that we do: onboarding, delight, marketing, and community. And Jason, what you were really getting at here is this 10x execution. So to make this sort of real and concrete for our watchers and listeners here, let's actually take that auto summarize feature. Of course, every email client, every app has a summary feature. But if you are deep into these features, you'll know there's a tremendous spectrum in how well they work. For example, in Gemini, in Copilot, and both of those experiences, you have to ask Gmail or Outlook to summarize the email that you're looking at. And of course, it takes some time. It can take a second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, depending on the length of the email and your network connection, which, let's be real, by that point, frankly, you could have just skimmed the message and have your eyes locked onto the most important piece. So what we do at Superhuman, and many people thought this was crazy, is we are pre-computing the summaries for every single email that every single one of our users receives. We're pre-computing the replies for all of those things in their own voice, in their own tone. And that's just a massive amount of computation. Now, we can do that because we actually charge for our product. And I'm a big believer in charging a good price for your product and delivering the best service, as opposed to monetizing your users in other ways. But we can do that. And so that's what we do.
See, this is a really good point for founders to consider, which is in a crowded space where there's many people going after the same users, which I guess Patrick is sort of noting there, like, how does this opportunity even exist? If everybody's making schlocky stuff and you elevate it, well, it will stand out even more, because people are eating cheap, bad pizza, and then somebody's like, you know what? I'm going to just elevate this a bit. I'm going to put something interesting as a topping, or I'm going to, cook it in a coal oven and see if that actually gets people's attention. And you could elevate pizza, you could elevate pasta, you can elevate anything in the world just by being more thoughtful. And the onboarding is another thing you get a lot of credit for. Everybody's stealing this, which is, is this product right for somebody? So let's talk about that for a second before we go to the new features, because I really want to educate the new founders who are listening. You are pretty militant about not letting people use your product if it's not for them. So if somebody comes in and they want a Porsche or a Lamborghini or a Prius, these are 3 very different products at different price points with different offerings. A Tesla Model Y is faster than a Porsche in many instances, but that's not why people are buying a Porsche. A Lamborghini is slightly different, as you might know, and you can really start to parse this. They all get you from point A to B, but with different criteria. So how did you figure out what the criteria was for this joyful, luxurious software that is massively productive, and who should have it and who shouldn't? Because gosh, somebody comes in and they're like, yeah, I'll buy the car anyway. I don't care. But you just say, yeah, you kind of do need to care. So what were the criteria and how do you think about it?
You want to do another screen share?
Oh my God. When you share these things, for me, this is like my heart explodes with joy because you know what? It's very rare that I get to learn. Most of the people sending me or sharing their thoughts with me are sharing thoughts that I said 10 years ago in a podcast or I had somebody on. It's not like actually a unique thought that's really considered. It's something that ChatGPT put into their 18,000th blog post about the same topic. So I know this is going to be unique. Yes, please share away.
Shared and never been shared before. So
Another
let's
twist
do this.
first. Here we go.
This is exciting. Okay, cool. So let's just take a, geez, we don't need that entire background there. Okay, cool. This is what I call strategy on a slide. So everyone should try and do this. This is really, really old, by the way. I don't know if it's legible, but this was done in 2017. And I think what I love about this is it's still relevant today. Like this is still basically the strategy. And these are the rows I always advise. Have your strategy, number one. Number two, whatever your competitive advantages are. And number three, what hypotheses or assumptions you're making, because you're going to make some, right? So let's take a look here. Number one, position Superhuman for founders and CEOs of tech companies with 25 to 500 people, so definitely SMB. And look how niche that is, founders and CEOs of technology companies. Number two, deliver the world's fastest and most beautiful email experience. And then number three, sell into those companies. And this has not changed today. We're on step three of this very long but robust plan. Now, why did I know it was going to work? Well, because of, first of all, these competitive advantages. Number one, I had high levels of access to founders and CEOs in Silicon Valley and then to the media, the investors, and the employees who influence them. And so this is definitely a second-time founder luxury, but having built a well-known company, having sold it to an even more well-known company, LinkedIn, and then spending my 2 years at LinkedIn wisely, working hard, but also building my relationships, I was able to, if I needed to, by force of will and connection, get some of the most important people in Silicon Valley loving the product, which was the kernel that turned into onboarding. I was like, well, I'm just going to go and sell the first 500 of these people myself. Why not? It's a grind, but most people are scared of grind. Let's go do the grind. So that kind of created the foundation. And then this is where you start to need to look at your competitors, in this case, incumbents. I mentioned this last Friday to the syndicate, but I like going up against incumbents. I like investing in companies that go up against incumbents because by the time you matter, it's generally too late. And even today, we don't matter to Gmail or to Outlook. Like we'd have to be 10 times the size, maybe even 100 times the size to truly matter competitively. And so, we're a microbe, or we're a virus on a microbe on the back of a fly. Like we're small. That said, it's important to have a strategy that works. And I always point to Conway's law. If you're not familiar with Conway's law, it's basically that you can see the structure of the organization in the products that they make. If you look at Gmail, you can basically see the organizational structure of Google. And that means that they struggle with certain specific things. So Microsoft and Google both struggle with creating fast products, not because they have bad engineers, actually the opposite, they have the world's best engineers, but simply because the products are already at scale and entrenched. And similarly, they struggle with design, again, not because they have bad designers, but because the leadership of these products changes every, every 2 years, and they have to do a one-size-fits-all tool. So what if you just didn't do those things? What if you built it from scratch for speed? What if you had leadership like myself that isn't going to change for 10, 20 years? What if you don't build for a mass audience? Then you can do something special. And then you have your hypothesis row, and I have some examples down here. You can tell how old this slide is by how quaint these valuation numbers are. It's kind of funny. But this is the answer to your question, Jason. It's like I sat down and I just wrote down this strategy that I knew would work.
Writing, I always tell people this, is clarity of thought. So, if you stop talking and you stop doing meetings and you force yourself to write something down and then other people read it and they've read it and then you have a discussion, that is, sort of the highest level of cognitive processing. How do I know this? Because I'm a writer and I do a podcast. Sometimes I write stuff down, and people really, if they read it, understand it because I'm clarifying my thoughts. So before I do a podcast, sometimes I write things down. Before I go on stage, I write bullet points. And over time, you can have what you think, your mental model of the world, which is what you're building there. It's just like sort of mental model. You're building the chessboard, and you're building the chessboard in the middle of the game. Like you're moving a bunch of pieces around and saying, how do I win this game? How does this player win this game? How does Rahul win, beat Gmail or Carvanesian email? How does JCal win podcasting or seed investing or pre-seed investing, right? You have to understand the game on the field, and that's what writing does. And then if you have team members read it, super important. There's an incredible book. It's the Amazon book, and it explains like basically the Amazon way. I forgot the name of it. I've talked about it 10 times here. Somebody will put it in the chat for us. But they talk about their 6-page memos and their process for meetings. Are you aware of it, Rahul, in any way?
Yeah, isn't the book just called The Amazon Way?
It's got another name.
Okay.
Oh,
there is apparently a book called The Amazon Way.
Maybe it is. Maybe I'm just. Yeah, it is the Amazon. No, that's like another one. There's Working Backwards. Working backwards.
There you go.
This is, and I think the Amazon Way is written as a right around of what came up in Working Backwards. So what they do in the 6-page memo is very similar to what you did here. You picked a format, it's cleanly architected, and then everybody else can read it and have like a discussion, as opposed to coming into a meeting and you're like, if you were looking at a chessboard and a bunch of pieces on the floor, you'd be like, I have a pawn, I have a knight. And like, then your perspective is coming from those pieces, not from, somebody sort of setting up the board for the discussion, right? You're setting up the board for the discussion here as the leader of the company. And then people can take each move you've done and say, you know what, why are we going after CEOs and founders? Oh, you have access to them. Oh, they trust you already. Oh, you're a second-time founder. Oh, the product has virality in it. And if the CEO is using it, people look over the shoulder at what the CEO is doing. The CEO is the opinion leader of the company. Whether they've earned it or not, people are going to follow the leader. It's like literally why the term follow the leader exists. So in meetings, people stop. If they haven't read the 6-pager, they call it, which outlines, what product they're releasing or what the topic is. They just start the first 10 minutes of the meeting is everybody sitting there quietly reading it. And then when the alarm goes off at 10 minutes, if you finish early, you can write notes or whatever, then they discuss it. So I love these thoughts. Let's take a look at what you built recently. And then I want to introduce you to a good friend of mine, Vlad from Robinhood, who is another investment I made before the product's launch that makes me look incredibly smart. Have you met Vlad before, by the way?
No, but you know what? I have come prepared. I have one of these with me, and I have an ask. I have an ask for
this is
Vlad,
like
so I'm
bringing
excited for it.
together Michael Jordan and like Steph Curry to like meet for the first time. This is going to be an incredible moment on This Week in Startups that you get to see here live. Robinhood and Superhuman, the founders of two of the most elegant, beautiful products ever created, certainly in this cycle. It's in the top 10 list. Just talking to each other about products. So get ready, folks. All right, show us what's coming. Show us what's new. Everybody's interested in seeing what's coming out of your brain at this moment.
Okay, so as we know, we set out to build the most productive email app ever made, and we have done that. But just being ahead of the pack doesn't mean you stop. We always ask, why stop here? We want to be over there. So last week's launch is our biggest evolution yet. And now, like a truly great assistant, Superhuman is going to be constantly helping you. Organizing your inbox, making sure you never drop the ball, drafting fully written emails on your behalf, and it can even execute complete workflows end to end so you don't have to. And I feel like I'm making a habit of live demos here on Twist, which is always super risky because I'm going to demo Bespoke Software. It might just
demo
break.
Or die,
you know what?
as we would say in the business in the 80s.
I'm here for
Demo or die.
I am here for it. Okay, we're gonna do a number of things. First thing we want to do is demonstrate built-in auto labels, then custom auto labels, then split inbox using custom auto labels, then auto drafts and auto reminders. It's going to be a lot, but I think it's going to be very exciting. I'm going to kick us off with this message to you, Jason. So this is, oops, got rid of your email address there.
It's okay, people know
This is email to Jason.
I'm pretty public about it.
It's fine. So we've just had the best year yet at Superhuman. We more than doubled multiple revenue lines over 2024. Amazing. True. Shall we find some time to catch up next week? Just let me know. Let's actually go ahead and hit send there. So heading over to Docs, this is the inbox zero image for the day. Beautiful to see. One of the first things we wanted to deal with was how much nonsense lands in people's inboxes today. In fact, over the last year or two, increasingly many people would come to me and say, "Hey, dude, what happened to your spam filter? Because I'm just seeing all of these marketing emails, all of this unsolicited sales spam pitches I don't want to see, and most of them are really low quality. And I kind of blame you, Superhuman." And I would have to explain, I hear you. It's not me. It's Gmail. It's Outlook. For some reason, they just seem to have stopped caring. They're starting to let all this stuff through. And it came to a head towards the end of last year where I'm like, being the user interface cuts both ways. It lets you do everything, but you also get blamed for all the crap that goes on in the platform underneath. And so I decided to take matters into our own hands, and we have now completely rebuilt all of that. And so what I'm going to show you are our built-in auto labels. So once you're off the beta, we have this new section, Superhuman AI, over here. And I'm going to go ahead and click on auto labels. Let's ignore the amazing stuff at the top for the moment. Focus on the bottom. We have 4 built-in auto labels: news, marketing, pitch, and social. And this stuff has been life-changing. Let's actually take a look at why. Let's go ahead and start with marketing. So this is real. This is my actual inbox. These timestamps are real. You see I receive a marketing email every 1 to 2 minutes, and it just goes on and on and on. And this is all just today. And what we're doing now is, if you have important other turned on, we're sweeping all of this marketing stuff out of important into other. And we didn't stop there. We're also, because arguably Gmail and Outlook were theoretically doing that, what we're doing is what they weren't doing, which is, if you're getting these pitches, and as a CEO, as a founder, as an investor, you're getting 99% of low quality pitches all the time. It's the 1% that you really need to care about, especially when they come from people that you trust. But you're getting all these kinds of emails that you shouldn't need to see. In my case, particularly, it's a lot of people trying to sell software. And I do want to hear from people whose tools we are using. What I don't want to hear from is the army of
SDRs,
you know what I mean.
Who are putting you in sequences. Hey, you didn't get back to my last one. Wondering if it's a good time. Please hit not interested if you're not interested. And you're like, I see what you did there. It's a trap.
So now all of these are swept out. Not to say that you don't want to look at them. We've put them in a place where you can very quickly just scan down this list and go, okay, that seems pretty interesting. But you don't actually have to go through it in your main inbox. There is now also a place for news and also a place for all of your social emails. So far, so great.
And you're training those across the corpus of users. So if, I put the New York Times and Washington Post into news, from the corpus of data that you have that this is a news source, or how do you know it's news? Is that just an LLM is good at it?
Yeah, this is one of the really interesting things, which is the way that we build quote unquote intelligent or AI products, I think has just changed. It used to be you would train a classifier, and you can very easily do this with a simple classifier. But since we're processing every single email you receive anyway for things like auto summarize and instant reply, we just also ask the LLM, hey, is this news? Is this marketing? Is it a pitch? You tell us. And it doesn't cost any more. It's just a few more
funny
tokens.
Because you understand power users so well. As a power email user, a super router in the world, I create aliases. So when I sign up for something that's a shopping site, or I sign up for a news site, I use a different email at calacanis.com. I will use different emails, like calacanis@launch.co is a group email when we send syndicate emails. You get the idea. So I built my own little hacks to build this. But man, if somebody could have just done this for me, that was 10 hours of my life over the last 10 years is building my own system to organize this stuff. And you've actually now built it for every user. It's so brilliant. Yeah.
Well, hold that thought, because what a perfect segue. It's almost as if you read my mind. You can make your own custom auto labels. So I have 4 that I've made here. This is exactly the kind of organization you're talking about. And this is just whatever you want. So let's imagine we're making the investor updates one here. I'm just going to do new auto label, and I could be like, I should say investor updates, and say something like, whenever a founder emails me with updates or news or metrics about their company, and this will backfill through my email using an LLM. It will go forward and it creates a new label for anything that matches this. And of course, I've already made it. Others that I've made are a request to review product design or marketing work at Superhuman, invitations for me to speak at an event or on a podcast, and requests to apply for a job at Superhuman. And some of these, well, actually all of them are incredible. Let me actually show you. Getting so excited. Investor updates. Super cool to have a single place where you can actually see these. Obviously, I'm not going to open them. These are confidential emails. Review emails at work. Now, we're going to come back to this. You can see some of these I've actually already archived. We're going to talk about how to create a queue of work out of these review emails, media, and recruiting. This one's particularly powerful. So I think like many people, I'm kind of overloaded with social networks, and I just don't really pay attention to them anymore. The one last social network I pay attention to is Twitter or X. If you DM me, I will see it. But if you LinkedIn message me, I got news for you. I just ain't gonna see it. It's just too many. Now, the problem is, I sometimes receive really powerful messages via LinkedIn messages, and I just don't know which are the ones to pay attention to. The problem is it's like less than a few percent. When people email me or when people send me a LinkedIn message saying they're interested in applying at Superhuman, I want to know. And you can see exactly that happened here. So this was actually marked social, a built-in auto label, and recruiting, a custom auto label. So I was like, that's interesting. Let me go ahead and open that. Andy, I'm a CS major graduating from UC Berkeley this May. And I opened this before to make sure I wasn't revealing anything I shouldn't. I previously interned at Amazon and Microsoft. My senior thesis is on how long-form email is on its way out. Would love to hear your ideas on this too. Let me know if you're open to a chat. Of course I'm open for a chat. And this is something I would simply have missed before. This is the power of, in this case, combining a built-in auto label with a custom
it's
auto label.
great. And, it's another example of me having to create processes that you then solve with software, because you're focusing on, I'm not sure how many users you have, but let's assume it's a large number of us now, tens of thousands. I would assume at least hundreds of thousands, perhaps, and we'll eventually get to millions, I'm sure. I created a specific email, and we've trained our founders only send updates to this email that go to the team, and then we've now built a bridge between those and I think either Notion or Coda to summarize them, normalize them, pull out the data. We're like a couple of steps ahead of you on this in some ways and a couple steps behind in processing this. But would be amazing is when you go to one of those folders, if it could give you a summary of that folder for the week, the month, the year. Hey, these are companies that have sent you updates this month, this year, and here's a combined summary of them. These are the marketers who are emailing you the most. Here's what they're trying to do. So you're like sort of taking that whole folder and summarizing that folder. I'm sure that's on the roadmap. Yeah.
Definitely on the roadmap. And you can kind of do that today in Superhuman. I'm not going to do it for obvious reasons, but there's this company that we've invested in, and they do amazing investor updates. It's always sort of structured in a similar way. And I just asked Ask AI to summarize the last 12 months worth of investor updates, and then produce a CSV, which I could sort of then import into Excel and chart. And again, it just worked, which was amazing.
It's so beautiful.
Okay.
Keep going.
So getting back to this story here, Andy, I will be in touch. Thank you for the message and for beautifully illustrating this point here. Let's talk about how you can actually turn this into a stream of work that you can then work on. Before I do that, I'm even going to go back to your email, JMC at launch, and see if it worked. It did. Here's what I mean by worked. It has an auto reminder. So I did this really quickly. I should have probably slowed down. I did not set a reminder on this email, but I clearly expect a response from Jason. And reminders are very powerful in Superhuman. This is how most people use Superhuman. But what if you didn't need to set them? Well, in this case, I didn't, and yet it just works. Jason, I see you opened the email. Hello. Please don't reply, because I'm going to demonstrate. Yeah, no, all good. I'm going to demonstrate what happens if you don't reply. Now, normally this is going to come back on Friday. That is using a feature that we call auto reminders. You can set the default reminder. This is in 2 days' time on all messages that need a follow-up. What I'm now going to demonstrate is auto drafts. So let's actually say I want this email to come back in 1 minute. And in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and get back to my inbox over here. So we talked about having a list of emails to review. So this would be the, let's go ahead and open auto labels again, my review custom auto label. Well, what if I could create a stream in my inbox that is dedicated to emails to review? And if you haven't used Superhuman, we have this amazing feature, possibly one of people's most favorite features, called Split Inbox, where you can split your inbox into streams of work
this is
to
so
do.
critical for me.
I
for
have
DocuSign, HelloSign, things I need to sign. And you know, it's super interesting. I have another investment in a company called Athena, which you may know of. And that's a second-time founder, just like you. I was the first investor in Thumbtack, and I was the first investor in Athena. It's a very similar story. I don't know if I was the first investor in Reportive or not, or one of the first, I'm sure. Definitely in the first five, I'm sure.
You were the first to reach out
to you. That's crazy. I can clip this and send it to my LPs. I do my job. I do the job you pay me to do. So it's interesting. I have an Athena assistant now going in and sorting and doing a lot of the cleanup work that you're doing with AI. So it's kind of like two levels. I see Athena as like the human solution before you build the software. And I think Athena sees like their future as what can they learn from Athena assistants and what they're doing in Superhuman for me, pre-processing my emails and my to-do list. So interesting to see these two pieces of productivity solutions overlapping and then AI being the glue continue.
It is super exciting, and we, as you may know, we work closely with Athena. Superhuman is their recommended email app of choice, so we're excited to see that partnership deepen. Always nice when portfolio companies can do that together. Okay, so we're looking at a Figma queue. Jason, you have a DocuSign queue, you're an investor, and one of the cool things about this is you can make a queue or a split really for anything based on your line of work. And as an executive, my main line of work is now reviewing work and setting strategy and vision. So what if you could create a split inbox based on one of those custom auto labels? Well, you can come here, I'm going to say review. I could type in an old-fashioned search query. This would be really hard to get right. Maybe I could do something like this. It's going to miss
from
some.
Superhuman, or subject this, right? Yeah, it's clunky.
Yeah, it's brittle. It's brittle. Or I can say, you know what? Use that new lovely auto label I just created. And in true cooking show fashion, here is one I made earlier. This is the split inbox based on the review auto label, and I now have a stream of work to get back to. Editing, events, activation, upgrade flows, teams first-time user experience. And I can focus on the stuff, which is arguably the most important stuff in an inbox that receives an email every single minute. And I can get to inbox 0 here before I get to any other email. So that's split inbox based on custom auto labels.
Incredible. If you haven't used Superhuman, I highly recommend it if you're a CEO, VC, or founder. If you spend, I would say, 1 hour or more a day in your email box, then you qualify. If you spend 3 or 4 hours and you don't use this, well, you could gain back, at a minimum, I think, 25% of your time. At 4 hours a day, 1 hour per day is 365 hours. 365 hours is about 15 to 20% of the work year. Imagine what you could get back if you had an 8th day of the week. Superhuman is the 8th day of a week that founders and CEOs and investors get back. How does that sound to you as a pitch if you're hearing my voice? Now, I'm not just saying this because I'm an investor in the company and it's going to return a multiple on my first fund. And if I cleared my position right now, it would. I'm not clearing my position. Stop asking me, everybody. I keep getting, this is when I know the market's coming back, is when everybody's asking me to clear my position. Speaking of never selling a share, let me bring in, and this is going to be a thing, folks. that you're only going to experience live, because if you're hearing this handoff, I was going to cut the Vlad interview to go on Friday, but maybe I'll put it together. We'll see. My good friend Vlad, the co-founder of Robinhood, welcome. You've never met my good friend Rahul from Superhuman, have you?
I have not, but I've been enjoying the demo. Good to meet you, Rahul. Jason, always a pleasure.
You saw Rahul hold up his gold card. I have the gold card as well.
We got to get you solid gold, my man. Solid gold.
That was going to be my parting ask. Let's just start with it. I have one ask for you, Vlad. Can I get a solid gold card?
So,
is mine? First of all, is mine solid gold?
Let's see it. Can we?
Oh, God,
do you have it on
desk. You? No, I don't have it. I gotta get.
You would know if it's solid gold.
You sent it to me in the YSL envelope, right? It was in Yves Saint Laurent envelope, and I was one of the first ones. So I would assume you sent me solid gold. If you didn't, we're gonna have to have a conversation after this.
No, we definitely. Yeah, if you got. I think I managed yours personally. Rahul, you must have just gotten it via being a gold subscriber. Is that right? Or did we help you with that one too?
That is right. And in fact, this is, if I may pitch your product for a second, this is my first Robinhood product. This is the thing that convinced me to sign up. I'm not the kind of person who trades day to day, but I am the kind of person who loves free money. And if folks don't know, this is 3% back on basically everything. So I was like, sign me the hell up.
It's a pretty great value proposition. Robinhood, I was lucky enough I always like to tell the founder story. Vlad and we were both in Sequoia Circle or in the Silicon Valley, Palo Alto Circle. I was at Antonio's Nut House, which I think is defunct now in Palo Alto. Somebody told me it's shut down.
It's defunct, yeah. Very sad.
So I'm sitting there with my friend Adeo, and Adeo's college roommate. His name is Elon Musk. And the three of us are sitting there at the Divius bar back when Elon could be out in public. This is 10 years ago, I'm guessing. And Vlad walks in. He's like, hey, Jake Al, blah, blah, blah. And he starts pitching me Robinhood. And I have to say, two of the stories I always tell people is how crazy both of your value propositions were, how non-consensus they were. Rahul, how's this for a pitch? Vlad comes up. I'm a quant, blah, blah, blah. He's pitching me. I want to get young people to trade stocks. I said, Vlad, young people, like people who are on their parents' Netflix account and live in the basement and won't buy a car and like they don't have a driver's license. He's like, yeah, exactly. Those people. I said, okay, how are you going to get them to start trading for their future? He says, oh, that's the best part. It's going to be free to trade. I said, can I repeat back to you what you just told me? He said, yeah. I said, you want a bunch of people who have no commitment toward their future to suddenly make a commitment, and the way you're going to make money is by making it free. He says, yeah. And then I have this further conversation with him, and I'm like, well, how do you get those people? He says, oh, we're going to give them free stock in a company. I said, okay. You want to make it free, get people who are commitment phobic, and then you want to give them free shares in the company. That's your plan. He said, yes, that's my plan. And I said to him, I'm in. And Vlad said something to the effect of like, well, the way you said it back to me sounded like it was a stupid idea. I said, no, it cost E-Trade $400 to acquire a customer on CNBC. I remember this because they used to advertise on Engadget and in my magazine back in the print magazine days. If you can get them for a $3 share, you just save $397. He's like, exactly. Brilliant. And I said, Dropbox is doing this. Back in the day, Dropbox was giving you 5 gig, you get 5 gig. Uber, $25 ride. I give you $25. You get your first ride free. I get an extra ride for free. It was like all the rage, give to get. And I said, if you get this generation addicted to this product, they're going to grow up and they're going to get pregnant. They're going to get a 529. They're going to start buying mutual funds. They may YOLO into some crazy stock, but eventually it's going to happen. And you're both in the same fund. We distributed Robinhood at $14 a share, I think. And this is something with your fund, Rahul, you're going to have to deal with, or you may have had to deal with when companies start going public. Have you had one go public yet and distributed a public yet?
We're probably about 2 years away, but selling is so much harder than buying.
So at the time, the concept was distribute immediately and let people make the decision. So I sent a note to everybody. I'm not selling a share in this company. Vlad's a genius. And his partner's brilliant too. Like they know what they're doing. don't sell, because it was like bottom of the market, 22, I think, something like that, or I said, don't sell. Then it goes up to $60. This would have been like a 5x in that fund. It was like a $50 million. It was a $10 million fund. This would have been a 4 or 5x on the fund. Instead, the fund's 5 on paper, but it would be like 8 or something on paper, and then 4 realized instead of 1.5 realized, or whatever it is. I don't have the exact number. So a lot of lessons there. Never sell a share if that founder is brilliant at product. And Vlad, welcome to the program. You're brilliant at product.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. Yeah, and no, yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that, and no worries about distributing. Even LeBron James misses an open dunk sometimes.
Well, the thinking in Silicon Valley has changed. So Roelof, who's been my mentor for a long time at Sequoia, I watch I'm lucky enough to be an LP in some of their funds. I get distributions. I go, here's a little Instacart, here's a little Instacart, here's a little Instacart. They disperse the distributions in winners. Same thing with Square, same thing with DoorDash. So the blended, I should have broken it up into 3 maybe and done 3 at, a third at 15, a third at 30, and a third at 60 or something. Anyway, putting it all aside, I want to ask you, Vlad, Rahul is very considered and thoughtful, and he is really focused on world-class design. You also, world-class design. God, I wish I had Alex too here from Com, another incredible product genius. This is like turning into All In for product geniuses. Man, if I had Vlad here and the 4 of us did this once a month, it would be the greatest startup podcast ever. Because Com is also like product geniuses. What's your philosophy on product design, if you could summarize it? Because Rahul's been telling us a bit of his, this 10X philosophy, and being really thoughtful about it.
Yeah, I mean, what I'll tell you is, Beju and I, when we started the company, we had to learn this stuff from first principles, right? And I actually learned a lot from him, because in the early days, he did the design and I did the engineering. And neither of us, we weren't designers or engineers. We were both mathematicians. So we met at Stanford when we were in the physics department, and we were studying physics. We both became math majors at around the same time. And so a lot of the skepticism in the early days was actually, you guys are 2 mathematicians. You're talking about building like an amazing consumer product, but we don't really have confidence that you know how to do that. Like, when's the last time you heard of 2 mathematicians building something? So that was kind of the first round of skepticism before you get even into like the fact that it's a regulated industry and the business model maybe was a little bit complex to understand, how everyone else was charging $10, but we were gonna offer this stuff for free. There was just skepticism about the team, and it was hard to hire as well because we were just starting from scratch. And so Beju, what did he do? He bought a Wacom tablet, and he was sketching user interfaces on Photoshop. And I was watching the Stanford iOS engineering courses on the Caltrain at 2x speed on my way down from San Francisco to Palo Alto. That's how we learned how to do design, and how I learned to engineer consumer products. I think what was so differentiated about Robinhood at the time, Robinhood did 2 things well that hadn't been done before. One was introducing 0 commissions and kind of proving that could work. But the second was actually moving brokerage into mobile, which also hadn't been done. And I think we made the right bets there, because 0 commission ended up being the industry standard, and brokerage moved to mobile as primary. And actually every brokerage of consequence, every platform that lets you trade stuff, had to resemble Robinhood in order to stay relevant. So to some degree, I don't want to take too much credit over the design. I mean, we had a great team of people. Beju obviously cared a lot about it. I think we had that culture set up from very early. But what I'd tell you is, when I work with designers now, and you mentioned the Gold Card, I think the Gold Card is a product that hopefully, Rahul, you can see there's a lot of intentionality in the design of it. Not just, the physical card itself, but also the credit card app with the way that we do virtual cards, family features, the way that like the app looks and feels. It's kind of got this monochromatic gold vibe where we try to deliver the feeling of using a luxury kind of high net worth product, but simultaneously make it accessible to the mass market. So we care a lot about this. And, when I meet with our designers and creative folks, who I spend a lot of time with, I kind of tell them two things. The first thing is everyone should be a craftsman and like use the tools, like and the tools are so good now. I mean, you have Midjourney. Design has been democratized and made accessible to a tremendous degree. And I think there can be a tendency, especially as organizations get bigger, to have like your VP, your senior director, your director passing your feedback down in a big chain. And then there's like one designer at the end of it, an individual contributor who's doing the work. And what I tell people is everyone should be doing the work. There's no reason not to. Like, I love it when my designers and creatives take out Figma or take out Midjourney in a meeting and just start working on stuff. And I try to encourage that myself by doing it as much as possible. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is, I think one failure case is when you have big teams of people and multiple creatives, you end up getting these big meetings and you end up seeing design by committee, right? And everyone kind of like throws in their 2 cents of how things should be changed. And you end up getting something that doesn't offend anyone, which I think is not the recipe for getting the best design. I think the best design is opinionated. It's gonna offend some people, and there's gonna be like a lot of conflict around that. So another thing I tell people is, it should be opinionated. If everyone has consensus, then we're not there. You should see it and have like an emotional reaction to it. And actually, we have to figure this out. If it involves kicking people out of meetings, if it involves being explicit about like, hey, this one I'm running with the vision, maybe this other one you should. But I think what kills great design is sort of like large numbers of people designing things by committee, and you have to fight against the grain to make it feel like a consistent, coherent vision, ideally from one person. So those are kind of the two things that I think are hard and non-obvious that I think are necessary, and I emphasize as much as I can.
So I'm just going to jump in and riff on that a little bit. First of all, by the way, Jason said you are a genius, and I didn't know that you went to Stanford. I didn't know that you started in physics. Folks, anyone who starts in physics and says, this is too easy, I'm going to do math instead. Oh my God. So I was at Cambridge, and I was surrounded by very smart people, of course. But I did computer science, and the physicists and the mathematics.
Well, then he decided they were to do ones. The ultimate boss, which is try to build a consumer product, which makes physics and computer science and everything else seem easy, because now you're into just strict art and science and alchemy.
Yeah.
Well, you know what it turns out? It's that left brain, right brain thing, which Vlad, I sense in you as well. I find that relatively easy. But and maybe if you have a physicist's mind or a mathematician mind, it feels that way. But Vlad, my question was going to be: I mean, you've had such a success. You've scaled your organization much further than Superhuman is right now, and we hope to be where you are at some point. How have you scaled the teaching of design? So I think we've heard things like don't design by committee, but the actual nuances of the craft and what makes Robinhood. How have you taught those pieces to people? It's something that honestly I still struggle with sometimes, and I solve it by jumping in there myself. I hired a president last year. I've gone from 8 direct reports, the normal VP structure, down to 2. So I'm in there pushing pixels and writing copy with everybody.
This is such a good
How have you done it?
Professional development.
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with great people. People that you trust being in leadership positions where they have influence. I think we've gone through this as we've grown the company and the design team, where, you know, the first go around, we hired some professional managers that, you know, were kind of further from the work. But I think the balance we've reached is the people that are the best at the work, whose taste we trust the most, are in leadership positions. And then, you know, they're kind of pushing things forward. And you kind of I supplement that with being in meetings with them, being in jam sessions with them. And meetings are not just forums where we review the work, but we actually do design in meetings and actually change things. With remote, it's been difficult. I think I always prefer to have people in one place where we can draw stuff and we can kind of go back and forth. And we've done some like multi-hour, half-day jams in the past. But yeah, hard for me to compare against other companies. I've never worked at another company, but it's not a clean process. It's messy. I think sometimes we end up taking too long to do stuff, and we redo everything and start from scratch, and everyone gets frustrated. So I'd always love for it to be cleaner. But no, I think Rick Rubin's book, I don't know if you guys have read Rick Rubin's book.
Yeah.
It's very good. Yeah, I think I mean, we're in the technology product business, so I don't think we're quite there in Rick Rubin land, where, I mean, his thesis is like, it's good if you like it, and the artist is kind of a singular individual. I think we have to juxtapose that with, it actually has to drive business results. There's metrics. It has to perform.
Right.
But I think there's a lot of truth in that book.
You know, it takes slowing down too, Rahul. So in our venture firm, I looked at how do we get my decision-making process that led to investing in both of your companies, and how do we scale it, right? And at the time, I met people through my network, or I found a great product and I just emailed the person, as in your case, Rahul. I like to report if I emailed the info line. That was my original philosophy. You know, I was the picker, and people said, "Oh my God, you're such a great picker." And that's how I went from, you know, being the first scout at Sequoia with another kid named Sam Allman. He did Stripe, I did Uber. It's pretty funny. And then having my own fund. Then I went on to really focus on building systems, as opposed to just having the goal of like, I want people to pick as good as me. Like, what is the system for doing that? And the system for doing that is actually understanding the founder's vision, right? And how does that occur? It occurs in a meeting, it occurs with a demo. And then I broke down, what are the items that Superhuman, Calm, Uber, Robinhood, Wealthfront, what DataStax, Thumbtack, Athena, what were the things they had in common? And they were always, world-class design was one of the 13 attributes. World-class design. So that's one of the 13 attributes we put into our database system when we're vetting 20,000 applications for funding per year. Another one is product velocity. Another one is the team worked together before. Now, if you look at both of your companies, Superhuman, you had people from the previous team, right? So it was a serial team, and it was a serial founder. Serial founder, another one. Robinhood, not a serial founder. I don't know that you had a company before it, but you were a serial team because you
we did, yeah. We had a company, but it wasn't venture backed, and it was like a moderate failure.
Great. So that counts, right? So you were a serial team, world-class design, and you had product velocity. And that last one, product velocity, if a person can release product on a regular cadence, they're going to learn so much more than other firms. And so we just slowed down, and we've been working on this database and this system for, I don't know now, 3 years. And it went from like 5 attributes to 13 of why we would invest, and then about 40 reasons of why not to invest. That could be minor things, like there's a lawsuit, there's an accounting problem, there's a broken cap table. And those can be, you know, red flags or pink flags, as we say. But I think, Rahul, building systems to have knowledge trickle down into an organization that was 3 people when I started, me and Ashley and Jackie, to now 21, 22 people, processing previously, you know, 2,000 companies a year, now 20,000. That's the key, is can you build a system? So I wonder if you've built systems to take the knowledge and philosophy you have, Rahul. What is the system for getting it out of your head and into their hearts, you know, and into their instincts?
Yeah.
Your instincts to their heart, to their instincts.
We have. I think systems work well. I mean, this is me talking about what I know less about. Obviously, it seems easier to describe somebody else's job. But as an investor also, we have not 13 attributes. I think we have 7 or 8 that we run through in our fund. I think where it gets really different when designing a product is it's so subjective. And you're deliberately, in some cases, Vlad, like you said, trying to offend people, or at least make sure that you haven't created something dilute, which everyone said yes to. And it's the subjective stuff that I sometimes find hard to translate. And I can always do it in retrospect. So for example, I see a design and I'm like, okay, we're going to tweak it in XYZ way. My internal thought process is, I just know. I just know why we have to make the change. And then when the team asks me why, I'm able to rationalize it. I'm able to say, well, this doesn't line up with that, or there's not enough white space here, or we can't have transitions. Everything needs to be instant, which is one of the unusual choices we've made in our interaction design. And some of those are principles, but some of those are you just know, and I'm retroactively rationalizing it. And my hope was that after 10 years of doing that, you come up with 100 or 200 rules, retroactively rationalized rules. But there always seems to be a few more, some that aren't missing. And maybe we just need to keep on doing this.
I love the transitions thing. Yeah, I care a lot about that. The engineers and design folks all know that, like, when I see a spinner in the app, I just lose my shit. I'm like, how did the spinner get here? I'd rather the app crash than to actually see it. But yeah, I think it's the small details. And one thing I'd add, we still do all hands weekly as a company, where I talk in front of the company, answer questions. I don't think very many companies at our scale do it, but like we definitely push for that. And
that's every Friday you do it. You have a little wrap up.
Yes, and Jason has generously volunteered to MC my all hands.
Cannot wait to come.
You're MCing my all hands in April or possibly earlier.
Cannot wait to come and meet everybody and tell them some of the historical stories. Let's talk about feedback. Feedback to over-index on, feedback to ignore. This is when you have a product that people love. I am constantly giving Rahul and you feedback, this, that, the other thing, like piece of feedback I have for you. I tried to pay my bill on my Robinhood card, and it didn't work because I had forgotten to pay my bill, yada, yada. It was because I couldn't find the app on my phone with 10,000 things. I type in Robinhood, I get Robinhood. I don't get Robinhood card. I got to type in card to find the app. So just that little simple thing, like, hey, I'm looking, I can't find the goddamn app. And then I was like, oh, they named the app Card. Why don't they name it Robinhood Gold Card? Like, that should be the name of the app. And then how come the app's not yet or how come there's no visibility for the app inside of Robinhood yet? Like, obviously that's coming, but I should see my balance there, or somehow my card should be there. Anyway, the card's amazing. The value proposition is great. But let's talk for a minute about, when do you over-index? How do you collect information? Let's start with, how do you collect information? What do you over-index on? What do you de-index? What do you what's the right word here? Over-index on and maybe dismiss.
Yeah. So we really over-index on actual feedback from customers, both quantitative, like you're looking at the data of them using it and where they're dropping off, and qualitative, where we put prototypes or actual working product in front of customers. UX research we did and we continue to do very early. What do I under-index on? Focus group style settings where you're asking people if they would use a certain product if only it existed, or if only it had some feature that you're kind of describing generally. I think there's so many times where someone will tell you they'll use a certain product, but they wouldn't actually do it if it came down to it. And what people say that they'll do doesn't always match up with what they do when you've got the product in front of them. So I think you have to be careful in some sense with focus groups and with people going over prototypes or value props.
Open-ended feedback can send you on a random side quest, and the person would actually never use the product. And it's almost better to just build a prototype and actually have somebody use it or look at the data. Yeah, I agree with that. What it is I think, I experienced this when I was building Mahalo, which was like a human-powered search engine. Essentially, Perplexity, what they've done now, or Naver did back in the day in Korea when I was building that product, asking people what they wanted, they would be so nice to the person asking them, and they were thinking about that person's feelings, the interviewer's emotional state, how they reacted, their smile, they're not smiling. That was the determinant. And it was so frustrating for me to get feedback that didn't work that I stopped showing them the Mahalo page for the iPod at the time. And I just put Google 2.0. I took the Google logo and I put 2.0 on it. And then we hired somebody to show people, this is Google 1.0, this is Google 2.0. Give us your feedback on Google 2.0. And they're like, yeah, I like this, I like that. But because it was a real product, they gave different feedback. It was such a crazy, weird move to do. Like if you showed people Robinhood 2.0, well, I'm sorry, Gmail 2.0, and you would get like more interesting feedback than showing them a new Robinhood feature. What do you think of getting feedback, Rahul, and then over-indexing and ignoring?
Well, as you know, I'm very opinionated on this topic and have written and talked about it extensively. If folks want to see that, check out Superhuman, How We Built a Product Market Fit Engine. It's on First Round Review. I believe it is their most shared article of all time, which I'm very proud of. I'll do a very quick summary. It's quite detailed, but the quick summary is this is really hard, especially when you're in the earliest stages of an application or a company you're trying to find product market fit. The risk is that even if you listen to your users or your customers, that it will give you a very kind of muddy, dilute view of what they want, because they all may want different things out of your product. A really old-fashioned example, but this is the one that I originally read over a decade ago, is hopefully some folks remember that PayPal started as a mobile way to transfer money as opposed to a web way to transfer money. Imagine you're polling those two groups of users. They're just going to give you two completely different sets of feedback. And if you just start acting on it, let's say in a numerical order, you're going to end up building sort of a very messy, muddied product that lacks coherency and vision. So what do? Well, there's this guy called Sean Ellis who actually coined the term growth hacker. And he found that if you ask people a very specific question, how would you feel if you could no longer use the product? Give them three choices: very disappointed, meaning they love it; somewhat disappointed or not disappointed; and measure the percentage that say very disappointed, meaning they love it. If you find that you get 40% or more people saying that, you have early product market fit. And he found that those companies, this is benchmarked against hundreds of venture-backed startups, those companies almost always find their way to at least some degree of success, hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of success. So what I did was I took that and built this algorithm or an engine around that to try and figure out, who do you listen to? Added a few more questions. Question next is, who do you think this is best for? How can we improve the product for you? And what do you think the main benefit of the product is? The main benefit is super important. So we asked this in the early days of Superhuman, and obviously, predictably, we got all kinds of answers. But there was a contingent of people who were saying the main benefit is speed, keyboard shortcuts, focus, design, aesthetics, but ultimately it's speed. Like, this thing is just really, really fast. And if at the time I told you, yeah, I'm going to build an email app and the core value proposition is going to be speed, then you, Jason, you were like, okay, fine, I invest. But most people were like, no, that's a crazy idea. Yet here we were with our customers, some of them validating that. Now, the key thing is, and this is hard to do, but ignore the feedback from all the people who said the key value proposition, the key benefit of the product was not speed, or whatever the main one is in your case. And by doing that, you can focus on the people who really get your vision. Now, there's more nuance, there's more detail, and you can actually turn this into a metric that you can optimize over time. But that is my quick summary of the method.
Can I ask you a couple questions? I tried, I went through the process to attempt to onboard to Superhuman as I was on my way over here. And I noticed something which I'm sure, based on what you just said, you have a very nuanced take on, and it's subscription gating, right? So a lot of products, they put the subscription gate in different parts. Robinhood has a subscription element too. Robinhood Gold, as you know. I noticed with Superhuman, the subscriptions like right out front, you basically can't even see your email unless you already sign up. Is that something you guys tested, or was it
tested it
that
on
way
me
from the beginning?
Literally.
Oh yeah, I did.
I
did actually.
This is when I knew I invested in the right guy.
Yeah. Okay. So so a little bit of context and a little bit of history then to make the story make sense. We used to onboard every single person in person, and I did the first several hundred myself, including Jason. And the very first thing I did when I sat down with Jason and all these other folks was, so as a reminder, this is a paid product and no one gets it for free, especially not investors. That's how I'm going to keep us intellectually honest here on your feedback. And he was like, what? And I was like, yep, time to pull out your credit card. Here's a little striped payment form. Put it in, please. And I sat there watching him type in his credit card number. I did that hundreds of times.
It was so great. Can you imagine you're the first investor in the company? It's a year later and he's finally ready to show it to me, or whatever it was, 6 months later. And we're at I think we were at Cyclass getting espresso or something in San Francisco. And he's like, okay, so you log in and I'm over the shoulder. And he's like, okay, now you take out your credit, you put it in. I was like, yeah, okay. So yeah, how do I skip this? And he's like, no, you actually put your credit card in. It's $1 a day. It's 365 days, and I'm like,
it's kind of expensive.
I was like, you know what? Moment of truth. This thing better save me a fucking hour a day on my email. and it did. But this is such a great onboarding device. And now so many founders, Vlad, come to me, and Rahul, they come to me and say, we're doing the Rahul onboarding. And this is when you've hit a product note. People will say, we're Robinhood for X, we're Superhuman for Y. And then if they can drill down and they know the product technique, like we're doing the give to get from Dropbox or Uber, or what Vlad did with shares, which, by the way, I broke the give to get share thing. Did you know that, Vlad?
You maxed it out?
I maxed it out because I would tweet, hey, if you haven't tried Robinhood, it's fucking fantastic, to whatever, 250,000 people, 500,000 people. And when that happened, I would get 100 shares. Now these were $3, $10 share. When I hit, I think 250 or 500, I sent you a note. By the way, I broke the system. I guess there's a cap. And the cap was you could only get paid for 500, which I think was because people were hacking the give to get system. Are you aware of this? Do you remember this?
It's not surprising to me. A lot of influencers reach that limit. Yeah. And then I think we have to find creative ways. There's also regulatory constraints with how much money you can give someone before they go into another tier where they're basically soliciting brokerage accounts on your behalf.
So that would be interesting, is to just give them a cash payment then of $10 or something, or put $10 in their Robinhood card account. But this is an opportunity. Breaking the system is an opportunity. When you have a viral system like this. It happened at Uber. A friend of mine, I had turned him on to Uber. He was an LA director, and he was a hacker, like a literal hacker. He was a consultant on the hacker movie, Hackers, in the 80s. That's how much of a hacker he was, like 2600 hacker, the old zine. He put an ad up on Google search for Uber Los Angeles. And it said, Uber Los Angeles, get a free ride. And it was costing him, $5 for each one or $3 for each one, but he would get a $25 credit. He got 500 credits in his account for free rides. He would be taking Uber Blacks everywhere until they finally started turning people off for this. I had talked to Elon about this one time. We were flying somewhere, and I was like, you should do an affiliate program like Tesla Rangers or whatever, Avengers or something, and let people get, a credit towards a new car. And he's like, yeah, we should totally do that. Because they didn't have locations, I said, and they could even be like giving people test drives. Now you can get a test drive if you're not near a thing from another Tesla user. And then people put up billboards for that program. And I think 2 people got the Roadster 2.0 for free. And he had to put a cap on it as well, because they put up their code on billboards in San Francisco, get $5,000 off your Model 3. So these things can be too successful, but then that becomes like an opportunity that there's like a super person there. So let's shift the discussion to acquiring customers. What, Rahul, have you done to acquire customers? What's been the most effective? What did you think was the most effective and didn't work? And how do you think about customer acquisition costs broadly?
Super important question. So in the early days, we had 3 pillars, and I always believed these pillars would work for us. Number 1 is virality. Number 2 is PR, and then number 3 was thought leadership. So when it comes to virality, this is probably the least surprising, but with email, one of the most effective. Email is one of the last few truly viral places where you can build a product. And it's the obvious stuff, like, for example, sent by a superhuman, which I think 30-40% of our users actually have on. We've sent many, many hundreds of millions, maybe even billions of emails with that in it. And to this day, it still drives between 30 and 50% of site traffic, depending on the month. So that actually still works, surprisingly enough. But then there are some less obvious things. So like with Robinhood, like with many companies, one of the biggest flywheels for driving new users is just users inviting other users, right? Whether it's to join their team or to be another individual subscriber. Here's the thing. As an email app, we get to literally send the email as the user. So we punch through priority inbox, we punch through focused inbox in Outlook, we're right at the top of the other person's inbox
slick.
as the frickin' user.
Slick. So it's because the from, just so founders who are listening understand this, because the from is not from Robinhood or from Superhuman, it's from that actual customer. They are obviously friends with the person, so it goes straight through. It's so brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. So that was pillar number 1. Pillar number 2, I think
PR.
I said, was PR. Yeah. So, and this is sort of generic advice, I think, for every founder that I give at the early stage, which is, depending on your industry, something will happen that is really news and noteworthy at some kind of a cadence. In the email industry, it's like, maybe once a year there's some interesting email thing that's going to happen. And I remember it happened relatively early in Superhuman. Folks may remember the app Mailbox, and that was a $100 million acquisition by Dropbox. And they popularized swipe to archive, like a really, really great innovation. Didn't exist before that, believe it or not. Now every single app has that, obviously. But Dropbox acquired them, and predictably, but sadly, a year and a bit later, they were shut down. I'm not going to get into the reasons why, but they were shut down. But I could see it coming a million miles off. And I was like, aha, this is my moment. Everyone is going to cover this very, very sad outcome, burning of $100 million. And then that itself is going to start to trigger mainstream media to start writing about email all over again. And this happens once every few years. This is my time to shine. So I was like, okay, what do I have that is personally relevant to this story? Well, I sold an email company, but I sold my last one for 15 million, so no one really cares. It's really tiny. That said, I worked at LinkedIn for 2 years, and I think I have an extremely detailed and nuanced view of how to make an acquisition work really, really well. And even today, Rapportive is still alive. It's part of LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and for an acquisition to have survived 15 years is just super rare. So I know how to do it. I sort of created the foundation and the framework for that to work. So what I did was I wrote what is to this day still one of the most shared articles on how to survive an M&A transaction, and not just how to survive it, but how to thrive in one and how to make a real impact at the acquirer. And so I just piggybacked my article on their news, and that drove many tens of thousands of new signups to Superhuman.
This is interesting. There's actually a term for it. When I was a journalist, they called it news hijacking. And the PR industry now, it's kind of part of the playbook. You can get pulled into it, as Vlad did, inadvertently, without doing it, or you can do it actively. You can do it passively, as Vlad did. We'll get into that story in a moment. Or you can get, you can do it, deliberately. And you see this now where people are like, oh, if you're talking about, Doge, I have an expert at doing zero-based budgeting from the accounting firm of Lux, and Lux, and they can comment on it. And there's like help a reporter kind of services. Vlad, PR played a major role for Robinhood at various points, also for Uber. And sometimes even if it's the bad press is good press kind of situation, the number of signups for Uber every time something went wrong in an Uber, an Uber accident, anything, even with the company, I got to say this judiciously, but no matter what happened, it moved Uber up in the app rankings. The number of people signing up for Uber on a bad news day when everything was chaotic were the record days. Vlad, do you have any experience in this regard?
I do, several. And by the way, I just want to plus one Mailbox. Mailbox, maybe you guys know this, but inspired the initial Robinhood waitlist. We had close to 1 million people pre-launch sign up for Robinhood, and we introduced a mechanic where if you invite someone that joins the waitlist and they accept, you get priority. So it was a prioritized queue where if you invite successfully someone, you get bumped ahead. And
I remember that.
we
talked about that when you were here in 2017. One of your first appearances, you talked about that wait listing, and somebody productized that. I think there's like a product you can buy now.
Branch metrics. Yeah. Branch metrics.
Been productized that hack. Yeah.
They came later and they told me, hey, the Robinhood waitlist was inspiration for our company, which I thought was amazing. I think they were at Stardex, the Stanford Accelerator, working on another business, and I think they were doing like flower delivery or some kind of completely unrelated thing, but they became kind of waitlist link tracking as a service. I'm sorry, your question was PR. So I plus one on virality.
Yes.
PR. I mean, I think that just building the motion and knowing how to do it, it's earned media, right? So you don't have to pay. It's not like paid ads. And I think that I'm not sure how much it moves the needle quantitatively when you're at large scale, but and there might be some correlation where, founders that go and get press just tend to be founders that hustle anyway. It's like, I got to get users, get me users however I can. Virality, I'm going to email everyone I know. I'm going to email all the reporters I know. You just try everything. And eventually by the nature of like trying a lot of things and being relentless, even if a small percentage of those things work, if you're just moving faster and iterating, it'll work quite well. We did have a lot of learnings in PR. Maybe you're talking about the whole GameStop thing, but even before then, like 2019, I remember this crazy thing that happened. We went viral on Reddit because there was a trader on Wall Street Bets that discovered the infinite money, the Robinhood infinite money glitch. I don't know if you guys remember hearing about this.
I remember this. Yeah. The money glitch. Yeah.
Yeah. So, he posted a video of him screencasting his infinite money glitch. And of course, the team at Robinhood was like freaking out. It's like, how many people do we have exploiting this? We got into action immediately. We were like making plans to close the loophole, look at all other types of loopholes. And it was a trivial number of people that actually went through with it, right? Maybe like dozens or something. So it didn't end up being a thing, but everyone saw on Reddit and the internet that Robinhood had an infinite money glitch, and they were like, oh, I can make infinite money using this app. And so growth basically spiked up just from that. So, we were terrified of this thing, and then it just ended up, benefiting us in all sorts of strange ways.
It's really interesting. You don't know this, but there were like 3 moments in the early days of the All In podcast where we went viral. One of them was Chamath famously saying, hey, this is below my line when talking about a spicy subject. And the one before that was when you came on, when I was in Tahoe to talk about GameStop, and Chamath was pretty spicy with you or whatever. If you look at the chart of the all-in subscribers and viewership, it spikes when Vlad is on, and then it comes back down, but it's back down at a new level, which is 25% higher than the previous average episode. Then this thing with the Uyghurs happens. And once again, we spike, and then we come back down 25% higher than the previous thing. Trump comes on, Vivek, and all the people who came in, and this is this hijacking of news hijacking, or as some people call it, earned media. Now, earned media is very special because the people who can earn media, to your point, Vlad, and looking at cause and correlation, there's just some people who naturally earn media. And then there are sometimes you get swept into it or you insert yourself into it. So there's kind of three different, I think, now that I'm kind of processing this in this discussion, which is always great to have discussion with smart people because you process stuff and you build that mental model. There's three ways. One, you insert yourself, as you did with Mailbox. Rahul. Two is you get dragged in because somebody does Infinite Money Glitch or GameStop and you have no choice because they're using your platform to do this, or like Uber. And then, there's this third where, somebody like Trump is just so good at just talking, or Steve Jobs. They're just so compelling when they share some news. And both of you, I notice, have started down the Steve Jobs keynote route. Rahul, you did a very well-produced video recently. Was that the first time you did a well-produced keynote?
It's the first time we've done live action. Yeah, because that's the bar. You got to stand out these days.
Was the reaction to it for your first effort?
Well, the reaction was great. So almost unanimously, people were like, "Wow, this is an incredible video." And this is, I think one review was like, masterful communication. This is how a launch should be done in 2025. I think there was one person was like, "What the heck are you doing? You're a founder. Go back to building your company." But and then your ego gets involved, and I double click on that person. And I have a look, and I'm like, no, they haven't ever built anything in Notes. That's just kind of a hater hating. But yeah, it was really fun. It's time consuming, as both of you well know. It took me about 1.5 days of filming, not including
1.5 days. Wow.
Or 1.5 days of filming. That's right. Film crew of about 12 or 13.
It was very
people.
polished, and that means it cost $50,000 to do, $100,000. Yeah, about $50K to make something on that polished level. And it sounds like it's worth it. You're going to do it again, yeah?
I think we'll do it once or twice a year, because in order to make that work, you need to sort of store up a few months worth at least of product announcements and then kind of condense it into a narrative that has a really compelling arc. But the ROI definitely seems to be worth it. And I would add, for a video like that, it's not a simple CAC LTV consideration. It's how it helps with recruiting. It's how it helps with business development. It's how it helps with corporate development. It's how it helps. Like, there's so many different avenues.
If you take the 50K and you have those 5 different buckets, it's 10K per. As an investor in the company, that was one of the great updates I've ever gotten. You don't need to send me an update. You just send me the video. Vlad, you are doing a Robinhood conference. I apologize I couldn't make it this time, but I will be there next year for you. I'm sorry I couldn't. Just was timing with the kids and everything. But is that the second year you did it, or the third? I'm trying to remember this Robinhood Live kind of thing.
So last year we did two product events, and it was our first time doing it. So we had the gold event in March, which was in New York, and that's where we launched the gold card.
With an audience? What was the audience size? Press? What did you do?
With an audience, yeah. Press, gold customers, gold subscribers were invited.
Total number of attendees?
This was about 300, I want to say.
Oh, so that's big. That's your next step, bro. So can you get 50 power users in a room and then give them some food after, get a little bit of press in there? So that means you spent a pretty penny on it. You spent, $250 or $500K probably producing something like that. Worth it?
More. I think it was more. And then we did Hood Summit in Miami, which was bigger. I think that was
that the first time you did it in Miami? The first time you've done a Hood Summit, or you've been doing that for a while?
That was our first one. Yeah, that was so the gold event is obviously for gold subscription. Those are the non-trading products. And the Hood Summit was our first active trader event, where we launched Robinhood Legend, our desktop platform, as well as index options and futures. And I thought it was awesome, and we liked it so much. This year we're doing 3 events. So we're doing gold event again. That's going to be in San Francisco in March. We're going to do a crypto event, which is going to be in the south of France mid-year. And then we're bringing back Hood Summit. We haven't announced the location, but it's going to be very cool. And then we actually started, we did a live investor day, live video. And we did a live video earnings call where it was kind of, I don't know if you guys saw it, but it was, I wanted it to resemble a post-game interview from the NBA because it's kind of an analogous situation, right? Maybe it's post game one of the playoffs, a long series. You're kind of
nobody live in the room with you, right? It wasn't like an annual meeting for that.
For earnings, unfortunately not. But I'd like to get there. I think having people live in the room makes it a lot better.
Well, I mean, if you look at Karp and Palantir, I don't know if you saw him going wild on his. It kind of felt the same way, like a sporting event. That's interesting you use that analogy. So 10 years into the company, year 9 or 10, you start doing these live events and getting people there. That's really interesting. It seems like this is becoming a new best practice. I put this around community, something you guys know I've been doing for a while, and you guys have been very generous with your time to speak at my events.
People need to be entertained, I think. If people aren't entertained, they're not going to pay attention, and then you might as well just not do it.
Got it. So this is really interesting too on a community basis. Game respects game, community coming together and meeting people who are in the top 1%. This is so powerful for your team internally, for them to meet other community members. I think it's like a really interesting thing we're unpacking here, which Steve Jobs knew natively, but his was showmanship. Yeah. But this is something I think that's even on steroids or something, because it was actually like a revival when Steve spoke. You had so many passionate people and the emotions would spill over. And I shared, it was Steve's birthday.
It was like a ritual. Oh yeah. You asked him a question at, was that Macworld? That was awesome.
That was at the Wall Street Journal D conference. And I asked him a question and got a laugh from the audience. But again, back to it being funny or entertaining. He was super entertaining. And they shared another clip, WWDC, which he didn't used to run, or there was Macworld, but they didn't run. And so there was like a publication that would run the Mac community for him, as it were. And then he would show up. Then he decided to take it in-house and he stopped showing up there. But somebody asked him like a really annoyed question and was really aggressive with him. And he would get up there and do it. And Vlad, that reminds me of you. When
he picked up the chair and he
picked up the chair as a block from the guy in the audience. He was like, okay, let's get into it. And I think that is part of the process today, which is, you mentioned haters, Rahul, earlier. The haters make you greater. I have had a legion of haters and small group of people.
Jay, you seem to like cultivate I'm not going to name names, but like specific people who you're like, I want that guy to be a hater.
I didn't do it in that.
Is that a deliberate?
Not a deliberate.
Palmer Luckey, I think.
Yeah,
you're thinking.
I mean, that's what I'm going to get into. I sometimes give my opinion, and in that case, I was reading a news story, and the news story was like, Palmer's doing these things covertly, funding, Trump stuff or whatever, anti-Hillary stuff, and it was kind of a throwaway story in The Guardian and The Verge and The Daily Beast. You know how the press used to work. They would just kind of dump on somebody. And I was like, my only point here for founders is don't do covert political stuff, which I think in 2016 or 17 was pretty good advice. Like, don't engage in politics. It's just going to blow up in your lap. And if you do it covertly, it's certainly going to blow up. And he took it really personally. And I look back on the video and I was a little bit spicy. I was like, this is really dumb. Palmer's dumb for doing this. And then the second thing that happened is sometimes the press didn't tell the truth. So it's possible he claims that, they exaggerated the story. Maybe they did. And then I was a little bit spicy. And then Zuck fired him. So he's got a lot of pain there, right? He feels like, and so as somebody on the inside told me, I won't say who, this kind of came from two people, in his orbit, was he just sees me as like the avatar of his anger for that firing. And I'm like, you know what? I can apologize to him for like me saying it's spicy, but I didn't covertly fund like some political stuff and I didn't fire him. I think the people who should be angry at are the journalists, himself for doing that, and then Zuck for firing him. But I don't know how to calm him down. I think he just likes being in a perpetual fight with me, and I find it entertaining.
Well, I think we all find it entertaining to bring it full circle. Like I'm like, where's the popcorn? I want to see the latest version of this fight.
I have no problem apologizing when I'm wrong. But you tell me, am I wrong in this instance? Do I have a blind spot here? You guys are my friends. Like, am I wrong here? Did I say it? I mean, I think I could apologize for saying it too spicy. Because I did say, like, it's going to blow up in your family's lap. It's going to blow up in your employee's lap. So you shouldn't do it. It's just stupid. So I may have called them stupid, or I may have called the behavior stupid. So I could apologize for that. But I think my advice is good, which is don't covertly fund political shit posting. Like, I think it's probably good advice. I don't know. What do you guys think? Am I wrong, Vlad?
I'm not as close to it, but I remember that, when he came to the All In Summit, that was great television. So
sure.
I was almost like, is this a real feud, or has this been just like engineered? And are you guys actually best buds?
Actually, that's a good angle. I'm going to start telling people it's K-fob and that we pre-organized it. Good one. You know what K-fob is? Is like this Japanese wrestling, which worldwide federation. I'm going to butcher this, but producer Lon knows it better than me, and he'll give me some notes here, or he can jump on and tell us. But K-fob was just like, we all know it's fake, but we kind of watch it anyway, which is worldwide wrestling.
Yeah. I was going to say, isn't that just wrestling?
But I think it comes from the Japanese version of it, which I think the U.S. version cribbed, which is we're going to make these storylines that obviously aren't real, but you as the audience are going to believe they're real, and you're going to buy into it so you can be part of the spectacle. Rahul, did I make a mistake? Should I apologize to Palmer Luckey? What do you think?
Well, it sounds like the advice itself was sound, and I'm trying to remember the details. Did you called him out publicly,
it was on This Week in Startups in a news thing. It was in a news segment. Yeah.
So I think there's a difference between the advice being sound and maybe it's a conversation that's one-on-one. I mean, you have this very long-standing management advice, which is praise people publicly, give people constructive criticism or feedback privately or one-on-one. Then again, the counter argument is he's a public figure. He came on the podcast.
No, he wasn't on the podcast. But he did come on the All In podcast and trash me. Yes. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, that was after the fact,
I talked about it on a news program. The news story came up. Hey, Palmer Luckey's funding somebody on Reddit to put up anti-Hillary billboards or something. So, I don't know. I'm happy to apologize if I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong is the problem. I don't know.
Well, if you don't think you're wrong, don't apologize.
I literally had Austin, who was the newsreader on that segment, Austin Smith, who you know, Peter Smith, who you know, and he was like, I think you should apologize. You want me to help you craft an apology? I'm like, I don't think I should apologize, except maybe for my tone. And now, I did make one change. Whenever we mention a news story now, since the news has been so wrong so often, that whole Dunning-Kruger effect, when it's about you understand like how wrong they are. Now I say, if this story is true, or if this is accurate, just to make sure that like I leave room and space for it, I'm doing it right now actually with Mr. This what is the Mr. MSTR is the stock where
Master MicroStrategy.
Yeah, MicroStrategy, because I'm like, listen, when I see something like that, I'm like, guys, taking loans, convertible notes to buy, getting real currency and taking a loan to buy imaginary currency is a very high alpha, crazy thing to do. I've never seen in 30 years. I don't think this is a good idea. I think you should buy your own Bitcoin. So if you're on Robinhood and you have a choice to be buying somebody who has 1/3 the value of the company in Bitcoin, and it's a 3x ratio and you don't own the keys, I'd rather see you at least own the Bitcoin through Robinhood. And then as another choice, you could get your own wallet set up and own the keys if it's like a real amount of money and you want a custodian it, which is a little bit different. But I mean, Robinhood's a pretty established company. You can buy Bitcoin through there and feel very good about it. But I've been pretty critical of that. But how am I supposed to separate the criticism from the person? He might get very angry at me too now. I don't know.
I'm used to, I think there's nothing wrong with apologizing. Hopefully you guys can hug it out. I apologize for everything, even things I don't do wrong.
You just apologize by default.
Sure. Can't hurt.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I do that with my wife. I'm sorry. Just by default. I'm sorry. All right. Let me drop you off, Rahul. This has been amazing. What a delight to have you both. And then Vlad, I'm just going to say a couple of questions about Robinhood as we wrap here. Thanks again,
Great
Rahul.
to meet you, Rahul.
Yeah.
And,
You too. I'll hit you up about the gold card, and Jason,
I'm gonna
thanks
finish
so
my
much for having me
onboarding.
again.
This is great. I'm taking you both out for a steak when I'm in San Francisco. We'll have well, this will be to be continued. This little trio here. All right, take care, Rahul. Upload that audio file for us. Hey, Vlad. The business. I wanted to talk to you just about the swings in the value of the company and running a public company that goes down to like. I think I bought more. I tweeted it the other day. You know, I'm just such a fan of the product. I make my decisions based on product, founder and customer.
I love it. And I love that you haven't sold a share.
I mean, why sell a share in something I think 10 years from now will be worth 10x? Like, I think that you will be $1 trillion company eventually. I'm talking my own book here, but it's a fraction of my overall, net worth. So like, I don't want to make it into bigger than it is. And I don't like to pump stocks or anything like that. But when I make a decision to own a company like Berkshire Hathaway, and Warren Buffett has a thesis. My thesis is the team, the product, the customer. Here you got a team that I've always believed in, that has executed at a high level since day one. You have a product that if you use it, it's delightful and best in class. And then you have third, a customer base that is growing and loves it. And, you see that from the Hood conference you're doing. So, but there is a reality. When this company went public, I think it went $60, $70 a share. Then during this down draft and Silicon Valley Bank going down, it went down to maybe $9 or $10. I bought more shares in the company when it was at $10 on my Robinhood account. And, here we are, it goes back up 40, 50, 60. I don't look at it day to day. I look at the trend of, hey, the revenue is great. The customers are great. But you have to run the company through those things. How do you stay even keeled? And what do you focus on every day when the company has shifted in value by 6x in the last 3 years? I think it's 6x. Trow to peak.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously much easier on the way up than the way down, just psychologically for folks, right? Like the volatility is not the same. On the way up, everyone's feeling good. And, what I worry about there is complacency, right? It's like you think you're winning because the number's going up, and then the conditions of being too complacent actually set up the scenario where if you're not careful, it could go back down again because you've got your foot off the gas. So I always try to temper. I mean, I think it's good to reflect and celebrate and actually see that we've been making progress or getting rewarded for the progress, but also temper that with an understanding that we've got a lot of work to do and the job's not finished. The job's not finished. You got to keep going.
Yeah, that's the Kobe line, right? Job not finished.
Yeah.
Why would I be happy? I love that quote. And Kobe is just, is he like an inspiration for you? You a Kobe guy?
100%. Yeah. I was fortunate enough to meet Kobe at an NEA event. When I think he came to Sausalito at the Cavallo Point, and we were I think maybe a Series C stage company. This was back in 2017, and Beju and I had a meeting with him, a business meeting, and of course I just wanted to talk about basketball. I was a huge fan, and I was like, "What's going to happen to LeBron?" He said, "Oh, LeBron's going to go to the Lakers."
Inside information. He had the trade ready to go. He knew.
He knew it. He knew LeBron was going to the Lakers. So
I mean, Chris Sacca had a meeting with him, and he talked about it. It's so sad that he passed away so young because he wanted to make his third act being an investor in companies and technology and company formation, and he was around the basket applying his same discipline, from what I understand, to learning our craft in the way that he, approached basketball. And there are these amazing stories of people like he would invite them to a workout at 6 a.m. So people would be like, oh shit, I got to work out with Kobe. Let's get there at 5:30. They would get there at 5:30 and Kobe would be sitting there having breakfast. And they'd be like, oh, you having breakfast? And, but he was like drenched in sweat. And they're like, yeah, he had his first workout at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
It's 5:30. He's having breakfast. And you're coming to the second workout, mofos. And he saw people, there was this other one, they were coming back during the Dream Team and they're coming back into the hotel. They went out to a club and it's 4 a.m. and they're coming back to the club. He didn't go to the club. He was leaving the hotel to go to the gym. and they're crossing in the lobby. And this is in the off season. And then people wonder why this guy just was such an incredible winner. It just all had to do with effort. Technique,
absolutely.
effort, strategy, all of it, philosophy, and the systems he built, right? The system he built for success, was studying the game, right? He studied it, and he was hard, and when you play with Dwight Howard, you ever see that where he calls Dwight Howard soft? He was super frustrated by Shaquille O'Neal's preparation for games, and he was super upset about Dwight's, because sometimes the big guys in basketball, they fall back on their size, right? That physical attribute is what they fall back on. He didn't have that. He was 6'7" or something, so he had to actually go with technique, not being 7'1". Tell me about the desktop product. This seems like I think most people who do desktop use Bloomberg or Interactive Brokers or something like that, right? These are like the super pros, but you started mobile first and now you have the desktop app. How's it doing? What percentage of people use it? Why do this now in year 10? Tell me about the thinking and how it's going.
Yeah. Well, it's going well. We announced at our last earnings call the Robinhood Legend, which is our first desktop product built specifically for active traders, was already at 50 million in revenue run rate, and it's after basically 2 months of being out.
What does it cost?
It costs nothing. Yeah, no additional cost.
So 50 million has been generated in trades from it or revenue from it.
Yeah, and that's basically just the transaction revenue. We're not even counting what may be incremental margin revenue or interest, we feel pretty good about that number. And obviously, if it's that way after 2 months, it's on its way to being 100 million business in and of itself. And I call them cylinders. We went from each $100 million business line. I like cars, so is a cylinder for us. So now we're a 9-cylinder engine. When we went public back in 2021, we had maybe 3 cylinders, something like that: options, crypto, equities. So the business has gotten much more diversified. And in 2021, we look back at the initial euphoria after we went public. It was a little bit of a weird IPO. Our stock actually went down on IPO day. So it was kind of a stressful day for me. And it went up, as you mentioned, to the 70s the week after. But it never felt real. I mean, I felt very fragile in a sense because I didn't feel like I had earned that valuation at the time. And the business wasn't diversified. It was very much reliant on a zero rate environment. And so you ask about, the peaks and valleys. When we went through 2022, the higher rate environment, the business normalizing, us having to adapt to not having easy money, not relying on that. It was very painful at the time, but it actually planted the seeds for us diversifying the business, becoming a stronger company, getting the team in a much leaner, better shape. And it sort of like set up the foundation for us to be successful last year and so far this year.
If you think about it, in this basketball analogy, and as a player, the big men, Shaquille O'Neal, they rely on their dominance in the paint because of physicality.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one dimension. But if Shaquille O'Neal became a decent free throw shooter, given the amount he had fouled, he would have been even more dominant. He never got that right. And now you watch today's game, you have somebody like Porzingis, Kevin Durant,
Jokic,
and Karl Anthony Towns on the Knicks. Karl Anthony Towns on the Knicks is a 4 or a 5. He's playing a 5 right now. He's the greatest big man shooter ever. I mean, his shooting percentage from 3 was like over 40% for much of the year this year. And so when you have a big man, imagine if Shaquille O'Neal could hit a 3. And then you start thinking about two-way, if you can defend, and they call them 3 and Ds, people can hit threes and who can also defend on the other side. You're starting to get these players and then assists come in, and you got big men like Jokic who can actually pass. And it's like, whoa, wait a second.
Jokic averaging a triple-double as a big man. I mean, I think I was reading somewhere that Jokic statistically is having the best season ever by any basketball player this year.
That's crazy. And then you look at the guy and his physicality compared to LeBron, compared to Kobe. maybe he's even got another card he can turn over, which is, imagine if he had LeBron's support staff with him and he physically had
if he got jacked.
If he got jacked. I mean, I'm not saying he's a doughboy or anything like that, but people do say that, like, my God, look at him. He doesn't look like a basketball player. I mean, if he gets physically dominant, oh my God, he will be the best player in the history of the league. It would be absolutely crazy. So, and it's interesting. I saw this as well with Uber when they had the Eats business, and then COVID hit. Rides goes down, Eats goes up.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
And now you're resilient. What happened to Airbnb? Poor Brian. God, if we had Brian Chesky on this with me, you, and Rahul, can you imagine? Yeah. I mean, he's another master of, just this whole alchemy of like figuring out product and how to run and scale a company and how to do the finance part. What an amazing, journey they've had, because he overstaffed a little bit like you did probably. Yeah. And then he cut and got it really tight. He does his 2 cadenced product releases a year. But man, when they hit COVID, he told me on this very program, like, he wasn't sure about the future of that business. Like, they went to 0 revenue. Can you imagine going to 0 revenue? Now, the one thing they had in their favor was they were asset light. They didn't own the properties, and people have pushed him to start owning properties. Having exclusives on properties, and he never did it. So they didn't at least have the hard costs of those things. But what do you think of Airbnb as a business?
I mean, like, his headwind became a tailwind pretty quickly, because I'd say, back then, March 2020 hit and everyone was freaking out. It was like shelter in place, don't leave your house. But then by May, everyone was like, I'm kind of tired of being in my house. Yep. I mean, we did this. We're like, can we shelter somewhere else? And I think Airbnb became suddenly very, very attractive, right? So
that's so interesting too. He turned the lemons into lemonade, because we went from you can't leave your house to you can leave your house, you can get on a plane, but you can only have this many people at the house, so you got to make a pod, right?
Yeah.
Which the whole thing's super infuriating. I mean, we got to get to I can't believe we don't have. I don't mean to get political here in any way, but this was like the most traumatic thing of our lifetimes on a global basis since like maybe some of the great wars, and had the financial impact of those. And we don't even know what happened. Like, we don't even have the post-mortem on this. Yeah. It's very strange to me that we haven't figured this all out, because it's pretty clear that for people our age group and our kids, thank God, this thing was no big deal. I got it twice, no big deal. I'm sure you got it 2 or 3 times, no big deal. I assume, were you knocked out for a month? No, of course. Like, there's some weird thing that went on here,
It was a little bit strange, and I think obviously there was the vaccine. COVID itself mutated many times, and even if you get it, Omicron or whatever, you don't hear about people on ventilators. But for sure, what's true is there was a ton of misinformation, and I think a lot of people started losing trust in our institutions at around that time, particularly when I think the first one was, the whole masking debate, where, the guidance was nobody should be wearing masks, but simultaneously make sure the, emergency workers and the medical staff have the masks for themselves. I think
that was the one that got me, because I was like, it's very simple. You don't need to game the American public, and I'm not in the camp that like Fauci's a war criminal, but I do think like they did try to manipulate when they should have just been straight with the American people. They could have just said, because leadership's about being very clear and defining reality. We don't have enough masks. So please leave the masks for the doctors and the nurses and the EMTs and the frontline workers. Wear a mask if you have them, but don't hoard masks. And if you hoarded a bunch of masks, just bring them down to the hospital and drop them in the front. Like, that would be a very easy thing to say. And then they were doing all this weird stuff. I don't know if you saw the reports in the New York Times, but they had a woman who was the FISA woman at the CDC, and she was training people on how to use keywords in their personal emails to make their emails not subpoenable. So they were like, use like literally hacker speak. Put a backwards 3 for an E and a $ for certain keywords, so they can't.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, You work for the American goddamn people. What do you think of all this Doge stuff? I'm curious because you had to, what was the peak employee count? And when you did your reorg, where did you get to? And then when you look at what's going on in Washington, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, what I'd have to say, so I think our peak employee count was probably end of 2021. We were at about 4,000 people. And we got down to maybe a little bit over 2,000. So yeah,
what was the difference between the two staff sizes? Some people report that things are more efficient when you have less.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we saw that directly. And at that time, you know, we also reorganized the business. I went to GMs and business leaders who were owning their P&Ls. But we moved much faster. We move much faster now. And I think, you know, the reality of it is it happened during COVID, end of 2019. I want to say we were under 1,000 people. We quadrupled basically during COVID. These people hadn't met each other in person. They were just on these Zoom calls. So there were a lot of confounding variables that I think would force us to not work particularly well together. So we ended up reversing all of that. And you know, you see the product velocity, the accountability, the performance of the company. We had to learn how to do this, but it's true what they say. I mean, I think that the company was frankly overstaffed, and we got ahead of ourselves. We got too loose. We were always a very lean company, and we always strived to do more with less when we were private, and we got a little bit away from that. So when I think about the federal government, and I've got a lot of friends that work at the federal government. You know, I'm in DC right now. I grew up here. And, you know, they're very nervous right now, as they should be, because they see what's happening.
Yeah.
But I think it's tough medicine. The country needs it. I think the deficit's the biggest problem that we have right now. And I'm glad that, you know, the administration recognizes that, and it seems like the people are behind it. I think that, you know, it's the medicine's going to go down tough, but I think there's so much waste that
it's pretty clear. You know,
there's so much that needs to be
you're
cut.
a nimble startup, and you had waste. You know, so
yeah,
if you can admit it, I think we can admit it in the government. Let's end on crypto. We went from a regulatory environment where, you know, Gary Gensler was like, hey, we have a playbook here. We got rules here. Follow the rules. Seems reasonable in some ways. But the truth is, these things, when you say crypto, or a person says crypto, not you specifically, but when a person says crypto, that can mean a trading card, an NFT. It could mean a DAO, a group of people investing money together, i.e. like a venture firm. It could mean a meme coin. It can mean a utility token that gets burnt as you do usage. Man, there are so many different ways, you know, that you could be involved in this. So what should happen in crypto? What would you like to see? Because you have people trading on your platform. What would be a reasonable solution to what feels like, to me, we had no rules, so it was too hot. Then we had, you know, follow the existing rules, too cold. Now we're back to too hot, in my opinion, with like the Malay coin, the Trump coin, whatever. You know, probably need a little more reg. What should David Sachs do? What should the future be? How should the SEC look at this? And what would you like to see, because you're directly impacted by it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I'd love to see is there being a path to use crypto for securities, for real world productive assets that generate revenue. I wrote an op-ed that was in the Washington Post a couple weeks ago, and my argument was there's a lot of criticism, skepticism around crypto because all people are seeing are Bitcoin and meme coins right now. The reason for that is we're not actually allowed in the US to connect crypto to things of value. So, of course, the easy things that regulators pass through are meme coins. And, you know, nothing wrong with meme coins. I think those are very, very interesting. But what I'd love to see is crypto technology being applied to making it easier to invest in startups, eventually public stocks as well. The traditional financial system should move onto crypto technology as the next layer of infrastructure beyond cloud. I think that's going to be a huge thing. We see the value of both because we have a large scaled crypto business and a large scale traditional assets business. Crypto business is over an order of magnitude less expensive to run because a lot of the central intermediaries like clearinghouses, settlement, transfer agencies, those are all done by software on the blockchain. And it's simpler to operate, and you can pass on the savings in the form of better prices and also better user experience for customers. Crypto runs 24/7. By default, there's fractionalization by default. I don't even want to begin to tell you how hard it is and how much we've had to work to get to 24/5 trading on equities with Robinhood 24-hour market, and how complex it is to make fractional shares for something like Berkshire Hathaway A shares happen. Like these are some of the most difficult engineering challenges that just like happen for free in using crypto technology.
So you mentioned startups there. I'm a big fan, as you know. I invest in 100 startups a year. I have the largest syndicate in the world, 11,000 accredited and qualified purchasers. So,
and I'm glad to be on your show because hopefully, I'm assuming this means we're still a startup, which I believe we are.
You have the startup mentality and never lose it because that's how you succeed. Only the paranoid survive, and you got to keep focusing on product, team, and customer. Those three things, you make it work. So tell me what your vision is for Robinhood users doing what I do every day, or maybe participating in my syndicate. If I had a great company like Superhuman, and I wanted to share it with the Robinhood user base, is that, are you and I going to be collaborating on something like that eventually?
Yeah, I mean, I would love that. I mean, I'll tell you this. You look at what our customers are investing in right now and what they're interested in investing in. It's very clear. We actually publish it. Tesla, I mean, I think back since 2019, Tesla was the most commonly invested in name on the Robinhood platform. It was number one. Before then, it was Apple, because, Apple was the most innovative company back when we started Robinhood. It was sort of in the wake of the Steve Jobs era. So it was Apple for a long time. Then it became Tesla. Recently, it's NVIDIA. So Robinhood users love Elon Musk companies. Solar City was very, very popular on the platform before it folded into Tesla. NVIDIA is very popular now. They're investing in electric vehicles, quantum computing, AI, which, the proxy is NVIDIA there, because there's really not that much in the public markets that can give you AI exposure. SpaceX would clearly be very, very popular if available, right? I mean, our customers love Elon Musk. They love Tesla. It's hard for me to imagine that, SpaceX would not do well. And there's not too many opportunities to invest in AI in the public markets. OpenAI is still private. Anthropic is still private. I think those would do very well also. Yeah. And I think it's interesting. So the retail angle is obvious for me. Why is it interesting on the other side for the startups and companies? So I think for late stage companies, it's useful because the employees want the liquidity. Some of them have been around for a long time. The employees are actually motivated to sell some of their stock and take some chips off the table.
And some companies do that, as programmatically already. SpaceX, I think, does it twice a year. Stripe does it once a year. And they have a very orderly process to, let people cash in some chips. And I think they even do it on a certain percentage. So if retail wanted them, and there's like some Destiny ETF or something that got popular because it owned some SpaceX. And I had the founder on here. I don't think they even it might've been their largest holding because of the valuation, but it's not like at the time, I don't think they had a very cheap price on SpaceX. They had bought it, at a very high price, and people want it so bad that they found a way because consumers are smart, like you're saying.
That ETF ran up, right? The ETF ran up. That showed you some of the demand.
That showed demand. Yeah, not logic, but demand.
So I do think like later stage post IPO founders and management teams of startups aren't super motivated to do it because, in a sense, you start competing with the startup itself for primary capital. So I think the employees at that stage are kind of the stronger pull for the other side of the market. On earlier stage, the entrepreneurs would love to have that product.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when I started Robinhood, we had a hard time raising capital. I mean, you were an early backer, but we didn't have that many believers in the early days. And you could get Robinhood stock. You could invest in Robinhood on Angel List at a 10 million valuation cap.
Crazy.
And we pitched so many individual investors who were just, you know, normal people who'd worked a job, built up a nest egg, retired, they live in the Midwest. And we pitched them just like we pitched every VC. And everyone who was interested, we gave them their allocation because we had to take what we can get in those days.
You were passing you're passing the cup around, just trying to make enough to get the company off the ground. Yeah, Rob. And we had, I think, Thumbtack was 5 million, Uber was 5 million, and Superhuman might have been 10. Yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I imagine if we had an easier way to, you just tap a button, you get access to global liquidity. And, you know, retail gets access with appropriate guardrails and disclosure to early stage opportunities. As an early stage entrepreneur, getting my venture off the ground, looking for capital, that would be a great product offering.
I am super excited about it. My best piece of advice to the SEC, I've made it clear to a bunch of my friends over there, create an accreditation test.
Yeah.
You know, and I use the example, when you go into Robinhood, if you don't understand options and puts and these, you know, more elaborate, you know, devices, not just buying and selling a share, but shorting it and doing options trading, you do such an amazing job walking people through an education. Now, you don't have to do that, but you do it. What if in the United States, just like you have to have a license to be a barber or a license to own a gun or a license to be a teacher or even drive a car, and these tests are different. Yeah. We should just have, and the SEC has been mandated this, they've just kind of slow rolled it and they're slow walking it. Just a 3 or 4 hour course on private company investing and, you know, interesting nuances to that, diversification and preferred shares versus common shares, all that stuff. And you just take a 50 question test. The test could be $25. You could have the test in Robinhood. You could have it at the SEC's website. You could do it any number of ways. And you have to take a course that would be free online, or you could take it in person for $100. Man, this would be so perfect, wouldn't it?
My take on that is I think it would be odd if the friction to investing in a company like SpaceX, for example, is significantly higher than investing in a meme coin. It's like you have to pay, you have to take an accreditation test.
Yes.
Because SpaceX is risky and you have to know what you're doing. But, you know,
I would
meme
like to
coins
have it
are
for
okay.
both. Like, I'm talking like, man, when I took a firearm test in California, it was like, what's the best way to hold a loaded gun? And it was like, point it in the air, point it at the ground, point it straight in front of you, or, you know, have it in the holster or on the lockbox. And it was like, I don't know. Should I be waving a gun in the air? Probably better to keep it in a holster when it's loaded. It was like the silliest test ever.
Yeah.
It was crazy. All right, listen, Vlad. Yeah, good.
I was going to say, I think there's a lot of solutions, and I think we're excited to be kind of deeper in that discussion. I think that platforms can do a lot here to put private companies in different tiers. For example, you know, some companies have audited financials that are public company quality, and you know, those should be in a high tier where they provide a lot of disclosure. And then some don't do anything, and maybe you put like a skull and crossbones and big warnings and say this is like incredibly risky. Kind of like
you have meme coins under it.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like you have pink sheets and penny stocks right now that really don't have the same type of reporting requirements. So yeah, I'm more in the favor of like self-certification and really accurate labeling of what type of disclosure the company has.
If you're a freedom-loving person, you want people to do whatever they want with their money, whether it's Vegas, sports, crypto, stocks, you know, because you get educated. And this is what I always told people who criticize Robinhood. Oh, people are gambling, whatever. It's like, people are gambling. Like a third of the country does sports betting. I bet on every Knick game using Prize Picks. I love it. It's my right to do that. I know that I might lose money, but I enjoy putting $100 or $500 on the game. It makes me more engaged. It's fun for me. My choice.
It's American.
It's American.
That's what America's all about.
Yes. And the only thing we need to do is disclosures. That's all. Some simple disclosures, some simple education. Vlad, wonderful to have you on. Thanks for taking the time, my friend. I look forward to coming to your all hands, and I will be there for the Hood conference next year. Great job. And we'll drop you off right now as I close up the show. All right, everybody, just a quick closure. 3, 2. All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in to the greatest startup podcast in the world, This Week in Startups. What an amazing episode. I think we got to release this one as a one-parter. Just Rahul and Vlad. Man, this could be something. Having those two overlap was spectacular for me. And as we were mentioning with Rick Rubin's book, Make the Art for Yourself. This is an example of art for me. That was so engaging. I didn't want to hang up the phone here. We're 2.5 hours into this program. So what an amazing episode. It's going to come out late tonight because this is a long one. But this is a great one, a long one and a great one. And if you're listening to the audio feed, please go to YouTube and watch Rahul's demos, and you can get a vibe for everything. Go to our YouTube channel. I think Spotify has video as well, so you can get it there. But please go to YouTube and sign up. And if you wanted to, you could have watched this live. If you're hearing my voice in the podcast feed, you could have watched this live. Again, go to youtube.com and search for This Week in Startups, subscribe, and put the bell on so you get all notifications. And you get about 20% more show. About 20% more show for free. And then finally, you can go to thisweekinstartups.com/docket, and you'll see the docket. And you can participate in that by putting in questions or comments and help us build the docket. We'll see you all next time on This Week in Startups. And let me give you a quick opening, 3, 2. All right, everybody, we have a special double long episode. This is one of the great episodes in the past couple of years of All In. I have 2 of my earliest and most successful investments on the program, and they overlap for about 45 minutes, I think. And 3, 2. Hey, everybody, welcome back to This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis, and today we have an exceptional episode. 2 of my favorite investments, Superhuman and Robinhood, are run by Rahul Vohra and Vlad Tenev, and they are on the podcast today individually with an overlap in the middle. And this is an extraordinary episode because I can always tell when it's extraordinary. These are 2 of the smartest people I bet on. They've built 2 huge companies. You know these brands. And we talk a lot about products, product market fit, acquiring customers and their individual journeys. You're going to need to watch this with everybody on your team. You're going to need to take notes. You do not need to put this on a high speed because you're going to want to really take detailed notes or run it through an AI because there's so many founder lessons in here. The density of knowledge and advice is crazy. This will be the number 1 episode of the year, I predict, and I want you to enjoy it. If you're listening to me right now, we publish in video on YouTube, and Rahul does a number of demos that are pretty spectacular. So I recommend you go to youtube.com and search for This Week in Startups, subscribe, and hit that little alert bell. And then you will get alerts when we go live. If you watch the live version of This Week in Startups, about 20-30% more show. We edit it down for clarity and the final product. But you can watch it live and interact with the other fans. A couple of thousand of us show up every day to do that. You can also follow me on x.com/Jason when we go live. And then LinkedIn, you can search for Jason Calacanis and follow me. Sorry, I can't accept any new new relationships because there's a limit. What a spectacular show. Buckle up, everybody. Okay.